Monsters, creatures, legends. You know them. You slay them. But do you ever get to play them? Sure, defeating a giant in single combat, solving a sphinx's riddle, or even outwitting a devil is a lot of fun. But what if you were the giant, sphinx, or devil? What if you could become the monster? Well, now you can. Continuing the tradition of Year of Monsters, Roll for Combat is proud to present the Year of Legends. Every month, you'll receive a new legendary creature that you can play as a character for either 5e or Pathfinder. Now you too can play as a fallen angel, a stony gargoyle, a brain-eating seraphage, an ocular evil eye, a towering giant, a teeming swarmblood, a moon-blessed were-creature, a tree-like arboreal, a miraculous golemborn, an accursed lamia, an ominous psychopomp, or a riddling sphinx. You can get all this for less than a cup of coffee every month. But don't delay. If you back the Year of Legends Kickstarter now, you'll receive Devils, a bonus 13th ancestry at the start of the new year. These infernal creatures from hell are the perfect complement to January's other ancestry, Angels. If you back the Kickstarter today, you'll receive both Devils and Angels to kick off 2024. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until 2025 for the Devils to appear. So, won't you give monster characters a chance? Back the Year of Legends today.
I stopped Derik mid-drinking and talking.
I was talking about how if I were to go to PAX, I would fly, and that me flying, or me having to fly, is the reason why I have not been to a PAX.
Oh, well.
Also, like, well, it's weird. I used to be, I don't know, I was never been like a huge Gabe and Tycho fan. Like, I used to read some of the Penny Arcade comics, but I've never been like deep in the tank Penny Arcade fan because they've always been slightly more video gamey, and I've just been out of the video game scene for so long.
I don't care about the comic at all, but I do care about PAX Unplugged because it's mostly board games, and it's in Philly, so it's only 2 hours from me, and it's fun. So I don't know what more you can say. And I mean, I actually didn't go last year. I was kind of in a weird place last year. I had a lot of deaths. Quite frankly, last year was not a great place, so I didn't want to go, and I didn't go. But this year I'm super excited. Professor Dungeon Master is going to be there, so me and the professor are going to be hanging out like last time.
Oh, besties.
We're gonna hang it out. Jess is going to be there. We're gonna hang out with Jess. Bob World Builder is going to be there, hanging out with him. I'm going to be hanging out with a lot of people.
I don't know Bob World Builder.
I haven't met him in person yet, but I will now. This is only his second convention ever.
Yeah, he seems like a good guy.
Ever. Can you believe that?
Yeah. No, but you know, like there is a there's such a gulf, I feel like, in the hobby. There's so many people who join and so many people who left, and maybe it's just like a function of the age. But it's like I meet people and they're like, I've been playing D&D since I was a fetus. I've been playing D&D for 30. Yeah, right. No, that's what I'm saying. Right. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for 25 years, 30 years, 40 years. And then you meet everybody else who's like, oh man, I'm so into D&D. I got into it, during Stranger Things season 2. And it's like, there's so very, you don't see, there's not as many people in the middle that have been like, oh, I've been playing for 15, people who say. There's
a few. Lauren, she started at like 3.5, I think. So that's right in the middle.
I mean, to be far,
Linda is a good example of someone who was in the middle because she started like near the end of 3.5,
right,
and then went on to be like the head of narrative for Paizo for a while. So
there you go. Yeah, I mean, again, that basically is the demographic I'm talking about. People who came in end of 3E or in 4E or like early 5E or I guess Pathfinder 1, and like I find like that demographic compared to the number of people who started playing D&D in the 80s or the 90s, or people who started playing, say, in the last 5 to 6, 7 years, is much smaller.
We're just too cool for school, Derik.
Well, I know. No, I mean, listen, because OGL was huge from a gaming perspective, but we'll get into talking about cultural reference, but like D&D wasn't the D&D of today as it was in 2000.
Well,
You know?
maybe not where you were, but where I was, it was. Where
I mean, I
D&D
still feel
was
it's still pretty niche.
not where I lived, but we'll talk about that because it's interesting. Because where I lived, it was still. I always say this, like Kids and Stranger Things. That was my childhood. It was the exact same age as
You have said that many times
because it's true. It's scary. I watched it. I'm just like everything they do, I did, and I was the exact same age. So I watched.
You also battled strange demon monsters in it.
Yeah, he definitely did.
I still do to this day. I still do to this day.
Yeah,
Anyhow.
he encountered like Russian operatives in the mall. There are a lot of things that
the first game I ever created was called Mall Maniacs. It's the first video game I ever made. That's how big I was into malls.
Scott wants to know what days you're going to PAX.
I would be there Thursday to Sunday. So
very nice.
Be there. I mean, I'm driving, so it's
Mark. What was your first introduction to the TTRPG hobby? Like what edition, what brand, what box set, or whatever?
It was a brown box with Zenzer Thames Dungeon in it. But I'm not sure exactly which one it is. I can't get it because it burned up.
Yeah, I think that's the 6th edition basic, the classic D&D adventure. I think that was like one of the last basics that they made. Yeah,
I think so. It was a late basic.
Yeah,
it was what I think.
What was yours, Derik?
Mine was the basic before that, which was the black box basic. This is like when D&D started to try to like make D&D more like the box sets more like a board game,
right?
To kind of get them into Toys R Us and stuff like that, and more than just being like at Walden Books.
I maybe you know which version I had because we used to play. I had friends who had older brothers, and they would run us through D&D. And then I eventually bought it myself because I was young, and it was at Toys R Us. So I got it at Toys R Us. I remember, I think it was $10, I think. It was red box, and it had the chits in it, where you cut out the chits. It didn't have dice. And you put the chits into a cup, and that's how you roll the D20.
Was it red or was it magenta?
It might have been magenta.
Yeah, so you probably started with Moldvay Basic. What I would guess.
Which version is that?
Moldvay Basic is also known BX D&D. It came out in 1981.
Okay, that's about right.
Yeah,
that
the Black Box and the Moldvay Basic are very famous, whereas whichever one I used, nobody ever talks about ever.
Nope, it is the forgotten edition.
Ever. And every time people are talking about things, like I've seen all the other ones, and I'm like, I don't even know what the one I had is. Nobody ever says anything about it.
Yeah, as a case of point.
Do you have literally all of them except that one? Is that what you're going to show?
But I still have my books.
I have like this is the
look at that baby.
This is the first version of Basic. This is the John Eric Holmes version, and then I also have the Menser Basic.
Which version's that?
This one is the first edition of Basic.
Maybe I had that one. I don't know. It had the chits. That's the only thing I remember.
Yeah.
Is the chits.
Let's see here.
I do. My books are still in like this one. So my monster manual. This is from 1977.
Steven, you ready for nostalgia?
Yeah. That's it. That's the chits. That's the chit sheet. Damn, girl. This is also from 1978.
Yeah.
That's what I had, and I cut it out, and I tried to use it. It was impossible to use because you would you get your fingers in, and you would pull out like 10 of them.
Right. So
and
this is
from 1979. So all my books are from 77, 78, 79.
Right. So this is the 77
That's
Basic.
the one I have. I have that.
Yeah. This is the first Basic. This was edited by John Eric Holmes, who was a professor of psychology, a doctor, who loved RPGs and like thought they had like immense practice in this thing. And so he basically went to Gary and he said, hey, your rules are shit and they're written badly. Can I, actually someone who knows about, language and writing, create a reusable form? And Gary said, sure. And then they created this.
I believe he's considered to be potentially the reason that role-playing, the term, got added to the game, because that was a psychological term for use a role-playing exercise to help get you through this psychological constraint. And so I remember that nobody's entirely 100% sure when the first time was, but that it is suspected to be from him. And there is a specific quote from him that people think is the first time.
Interesting.
Right. And he wrote the this was written in 80, but this was his published book, which is fantasy role playing games. Here is Mr. Eric Holmes, MD.
And every time I think I can't be out geeked by Derik, he always out geeks me.
There you go.
But
Damn.
yeah, so there you go. You started with the basic. But anyways,
yeah, I might have actually, now I think about it, I might have actually had 2 boxes.
Yeah.
I think because I definitely had the red, but I definitely had the one you just showed me. So I could have bought it more than once. It's a little, I do remember going to Toys R Us. I do remember the red box and buying that.
right. Well, the red box, the classic red box is 1983.
You know, that one I definitely bought. I might have just bought it again just to have, which I probably did.
So, and for
but
both
that
of
one
people,
you just showed me, I 100% had that rule book. In fact, I probably still have it in the attic, and I'm going to go look for it.
And for those of you who are keeping track at home, so the Moldvay basic is called BX D&D, is usually what most people kind of copy nowadays. It's like what OSE copies, Old School Centrals is what Labyrinth Ford copied.
Do you want to see what I have? I have something that you are going to...
So Mirto said that the chits were pre-Moldvay, so Steven had the Holmes.
Which one's Holmes?
Right. No, that's this one. I thought
that's the one I had. Yeah.
I thought it was Moldvay, but I pulled this box set and I was like,
which Holmes? What? Oh, he
1977.
Okay.
Basic
so
set.
You want to see what I had? You want to see? You ready?
Yeah.
You know what these are?
I mean, they're from TSR, the Game Wizards. I don't know.
Have you seen these before, Mark? Monster cards. Look at this. They still have the original rubber band. Yes. Look at this. Like, oh crap! Look at that plastic.
Let me see. Let me see if I remember these things.
This is the very first. Look at this. You would have.
I don't think I remembered this
on the front and the stats on the back.
So cool.
How cool is that? Look.
Wow.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, what's that? This is what you see when you go through the hallway.
It's a tube.
Here, we'll do a test. What's this one?
What's that one?
Yeah,
it's a Christmas?
Nope.
Maybe.
No. I mean, it looks like a giant scorpion.
It just looks like a scorpion.
Okay.
Okay.
Derik 1, Mark 0. Okay, next one.
Hold on, it's not showing it to me. I need to click to put you in front. Yeah, it looks like a regular goblin.
You both get that.
All right. Ooh.
Is that just a gold dragon, or is it something else?
So gold dragon was going to be my guess as well.
Those did exist early on when Gary made up the original dragons.
Yeah, I'm going to go with gold dragon.
You're both right. And it even has the stats for young. Look at that. It's really cool in the back.
There you go.
Like the stats for young, adult. Look at that. Ancient. It's pretty cool.
There you go.
It's not focusing on.
Was that first Earth thing a Galeb Dur?
Could have been.
By the way,
I'll go back to it. What's this one?
I mean, it's a dwarf. It's probably a hill
dwarf. I guess
might be a hill dwarf, but
Derik, you get the extra point. Hill dwarf.
Oh, it's a hill dwarf. There you go.
What about this one?
Ooh.
Whoa, let me see that one. Does it have one eye there? Is it a cyclops, or is it like actually like
it has 2 eyes?
That's tough. That one's tough.
Yeah, it's hard to see its face.
I'm gonna just say it's like barbarian human or like savage human or something.
Hill giant.
Oh, wow, that was impossible.
How about this one?
DDB got it. Oh,
that looks like a griffin.
That's right. Hippogriff.
Oh, it's a hippogriff. Look, it's got the horse body.
The horse. I missed the horse body.
Hippogriff. You went too fast. What about this one?
Cloaker.
Oh.
Nope.
No, it's an Ixiatl.
Right.
Oh,
Mark gets it.
The vampire manta ray.
Yes, the vampire manta ray.
Oh, what about this one?
Is that like a
okay, that one, I have no idea what that one is.
Land urchin.
Land urchin? I don't
never even heard of these. Land-dwelling distant cousins of the sea urchin. His spines-covered body is often mistaken for brush. It's interesting. It's actually got a whole page here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. What about this one? Do you have any idea what this could be?
I mean, it could be like a roper that's lying down.
I don't think they would draw the roper like that, though.
Yeah, it could be.
Is it a gibbering? No,
yeah, but it only has one eye. I was first thinking gibbering mouth, but there's no mouths on it except for the one mouth.
Is it an Odiug?
It is a roper.
I was right. Lying down roper.
Wow, you were good. That was good.
Oh, what about this one?
Oh, saber-tooth tiger.
Saber-tooth tiger.
That's right.
Mylodon.
Oh, what about this one?
A satyr.
Satyr.
Satyr. That's correct. Oh, what about this one? Ooh, this one's very tough.
I'm going to say that is a white.
Close.
Is it just like a zombie?
It is a
Maybe it's a-
specter.
That's a specter? Oh, I
Yes.
guess it's you could see from its leg that it's incorporeal because Willingham is showing through the leg.
Ta-da! What's this one?
Stone golem.
Very good, Stone Golem. That's too easy. I give it both to you.
Yeah, I mean it's literally been
Oh,
shown.
what's this one? This one's very hard.
Oh, that is a bearded devil. No,
No.
it's a 3-creen.
Yeah, it looks like a 3-creen because of how many
You
arms
both
it
get
has.
a tree.
That's not that hard. It's like one of the
Mantis warrior. What about this?
playable ancestries. And is that a
Lizard folk?
saurian?
Nope.
Lizard
Is it-
folk?
Is it just a lizard folk then?
Nope.
Look, it has that frill, or is it one of those like super lizards? What are they called? Like the big ones?
Troglodyte.
Oh,
It's a troglodyte.
Yeah.
I didn't think they had those frills in the
All
back.
right, this one might be the
Marilyn.
toughest one.
Marilith, aka a type 6 demon, I think is what it was.
There you go.
Type 5 demon.
Ooh, type 5 demon. There you go.
Baylors are the type 6.
You got it
there you
wrong.
go.
What about this one?
Pachycephalosaurus, maybe? No, wait, it's got sharp teeth.
T-Rex?
It's sitting down. Yeah, maybe it's just a T-Rex that's sitting down.
It's a T-Rex. I wonder what that could be.
That's an Umber
Oh,
Hulk.
that's an Umber
I
Hulk,
know,
of
that's
course.
this one. That's an Umber Hulk.
It's like one of the few protected.
And then here's the first
It's
one.
the Umber name redacted.
Caleb Dorr is my guess.
That's
for that.
right. You got that one.
That's a good one. Yeah,
Do you have any
Gilbert.
idea what this is? Now you can't
It's a lot-
see it.
It's a gelatinous cube. All right, we've seen your cards, Steven.
No, this is only set 2. There's a set
What?
1.
Okay, we've seen set
All right.
2. I
Well, I
think
thi-
we're good on that.
I
I'm
think
not
we're
going to do
gonna
set 1. We'll do set 1
Yeah.
another time. We'll save that.
anyway.
But come on, that is.
No. This is. Actually, I'm very happy, by the way, that
How
we
cool
did
is
this. And I'll tell you why I'm very happy that we did this.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, because of everything that just happened. This is me leading us back to the topic. All right. I just want to point out all that fun we had, all that incredible memories that we had. Okay, all came from TSR, a company which mismanaged, shit on, and almost destroyed the D&D license,
That's true.
and was reviled. And people nowadays write literal books about how badly it was run and how they were ruining the game and how they almost, quote unquote, killed Dungeons and Dragons. But obviously that did not affect our enjoyment of this or our passion for it. We just went through all these box sets and our 6th edition basic and our 5th edition basic and our 1st edition basic, AD&D second or AD&D monster card sets, and how fun we had and how much we resonate with all this art. And again, this was all done under the purview of what is described as one of the worst. I mean, it's literally, they did whole presentations about this. One of the worst run, most political, backstabby, horrible, shitty, underpaying their people with the crazy financial structures companies that ever existed. So just saying.
Your point being?
My point being that the game and the company are separate things.
They're not. They're not, though.
and you know what? And D&D used to belong to, a couple of people, then it belonged to a corporation, then it got sold to another corporation. And you know what? It could get sold to a third corporation, or it could become independent, or it could die off completely, and it will never die, because D&D is so much more than just the company that owns it.
That is an excellent discussion, an excellent prelude to what we're going to talk about.
Right.
But before we get to that, I'm starting a new way that we're doing Roll for Combat Live, is that we're going to talk about little news stories that happened in the week, and also then talk about the main topic, because I sometimes feel like we kind of run out of steam sometimes on the main topic, but I have lots of little news stories that aren't big enough to have their own entire hour and a half, 2-hour show, but I think it's important. I think it's good enough that we should talk about them. So I think we can kind of kill multiple birds with multiple stones. Before we get into that, though, there was a super chat. Mitros for 10 said it wasn't niche until the Satanic Panic. We'll get to that. That actually is true. And in fact, I'll say that is true. I'll say that it was.
And I am error for 2 said, I love the monster cards in Pathfinder 2E.
Yes, to find Rinder. But it's just interesting that people think, oh, the monster cards. I'm like, they came out back in like whenever this was. It doesn't have a copyright on here, but it was like 1980 1 or 2 or whenever these came out. I think there was 2 more sets. I think there's a set 3 and 4 as well, but I own the sets 1 and 2.
Yeah, I'll just say that when we were first starting Pathfinder Second Edition, we got really good use out of those Pathfinder monster cards because they were nice, they were big,
yeah, great.
And they had the big full size art on the one side, and managed to squeeze. Although it did get a little annoying because there were a couple of monsters that literally couldn't still fit on the back of one of them, and
Or now it's a little annoying that they have to put the stats over multiple cards, which I don't love.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's bad. Yeah.
So a few quick things. First of all, this is it. This is the last week for Year of Legends, and if you want to back it, it's now or never, baby. And Mark, you just edited Angels. How's it look?
It looks good. Michael Raccoon did a really good job on Angels, and it's got some interesting philosophy in there. It's got angelic feats. There's one called Wrath of God that just throws down like this giant area that just blows things up. And if they're undead, they get wrecked. If they're fiends, they get wrecked. There's one where you just like bring down all of heaven back into yourself and restore all of your grace because you're a fallen angel, and go into like this angelic form with extra spells and bonuses. So there's a lot of cool things that are in Angels. And Evil Eye, I'm almost done with as well. It's just that I got stuck up on the 13th level feat that does like a random ailment curse from a list of 20 possible curses.
Is there a random table in there? Oh my god.
Yes, where it has 18 curses, the 19 you pick one of the 18 curses, and 20 you pick 2 of the 18 curses.
That's so beautiful. Well,
let me just go out on a limb.
Yes.
And say that's freaking sweet, because the thing that I probably miss the most from like modern D20, especially Pathfinder Second Edition, is there's just no random tables anymore. We just don't get them.
Mark, what is my policy on random tables?
Steven likes adding random tables. So, like, our dragon book has a spore breath weapon on the Toadstool Dragon that just randomly picks between 12 other possible breath weapon effects.
Yeah,
my stance on random tables is more. As many as you can get away. I love random tables.
Steven's gonna be very happy when I finish the very last thing in PF2 Eldamon, which is a plethora of random tables.
I love them
for everything about your Eldamon, so you can randomly generate.
Yes, and we have 32 animated tokens just for Angels. And I thought about it, if you flip them horizontally, now you got 64.
Yeah, I'm not going to count that.
And if you flip them vertically, you can double that.
I'm really not going to count that. How often do you need an angel whose legs are sticking up in the air?
If you like rotate them, okay, no, but you get the point. There's 32 like unique tokens, all animated, and I'll probably do them static too. So we're upping our game like big time for this.
Yeah, but random tables to me, that's the heart of especially like D20 based fan, like the classic lineage of D&D. And it's so, whether you're talking about wild magic surges or random monster encounters or like random magical item tables, and all that stuff is stuff that for me is like at the core experience of the game.
You're talking to the person whose favorite class was the wild mage. So.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
My group loved the wild mage. We had one wild mage who just kept casting what Nahal's Reckless Dwemer, the one that's first level in that attempts to cast any spell that you could cast, but always produces a wild surge. And so he would just cast that in every slot. And so at one point he was trying to do some kind of tactical thing in the battle and accidentally made the target enemy fall in love with him, and there was a wall of force separating them. So the enemy was like bang on the wall of force, being like, "No, my beloved, I cannot get through this wall of force."
It's like a whole separate topic because but Jedi Protector says reincarnation in 5e, and yes, that is random. But let me tell you something, that's nothing compared to reincarnation back in AD&D, like first and second edition, because you had things on there like Brown Bear,
Oh yeah.
and deer and centaur.
Yeah.
Like your
Yeah.
character could literally come back as an intelligent brown bear
So
after
wait,
being
here's the
reincarnated.
crazy part.
Third edition, it was mostly animals.
It was
Every time we cast reincarnation, every time, whenever we rolled the table, they always came back as themselves.
That's the most boring thing
I
I've
know.
ever heard.
I was so. I'm always disappointed. I'm like, really. It just happened. It always happened. It was ridiculous. It was. I was actually upset that it kept happening.
So it's funny. John says I still use the table. We had a situation in a Pathfinder 1 campaign. So this was a long time ago. A character died, and I said, "You are absolutely dead. Your body has been utterly destroyed. You cannot be raised or resurrected." And someone said, "Wait, you said his body's destroyed. You said he couldn't be raised or resurrected. What about reincarnated?" And I said, "I'll allow it." And so we go to look at it. We go, "Oh man, there's not enough weird shit on this." We actually found our old AD&D second edition book, pulled it out, and we rolled randomly on it. And the favored soul, or cleric or whatever, came back as a centaur. So
Yeah.
like it was pretty sweet.
I forgot. You can see the animated tokens. Look at those animated tokens. I forgot I had
sweet.
this. Sweet. And I got the first devils too, and the devils look good too, except they were on clouds. And I was like, wait, they shouldn't be in clouds. That's heaven. We got to make it look like hell. We got to put hellfire. So I had to redo it. But yeah, that will be what you get in Foundry. Finally, Battle Zoo Black Friday, 25% off almost everything. Almost. So a few things. Eldamont's not yet because it's not out yet. But if you use Turkey 25, and this is only like our third sale ever. I never put things on sale.
You had the Labor Day sale and then last year's Black Friday sale, right?
Yeah,
those are like, I think
it.
the only ones I remember.
That's all
but
I
there
do.
might have been
I
like
don't do
one
them that much.
more or something.
Yeah, I don't do them that frequently. But I do want to put stuff on sale. So especially if you've been curious, but you didn't want to pull the trigger, I totally get it. I myself just bought Octopath Traveler 2 because I really wanted to buy it, but I kept falling asleep during the demo. But after everyone I know told me to freaking play the game, I bought it, but I bought it on sale. So there you go.
There you go.
So,
did you wake up after you bought it on sale?
Well, I played it last night for 15 minutes and went to sleep. So
there you go. So you played more than usual. Mad Bunny Art had a question for you,
Yes,
Stephen, in Super Chat.
Yeah. So
saying, how do you go about choosing artists for the RFC books?
Yes. So I do all the art direction. We have a very regimented process. We also have a lot of artists that I've been using for years, and they are now regulars. I have about 4 to 5 that I use on a regular basis, and they get constant art from me. I basically never stop giving them stuff. However, for new artists, if you send me your art, I'll take a look at it. I will say I'm pretty tough because I have an eye. I have a designer's eye. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I did teach design at Carnegie Mellon, NYU, and New School. So, I do design all the books. So I do look at it. I do look at certain things like, the function, the form. Like if you're holding a shield correctly, a lot of times people put the angles of shields and weapons incorrectly. We'll make sure that's right. Make sure shadows are correct, and make sure the musculature is correct. If you're doing something more complex like ice or fire, to see if you drew it yourself or if you used clip art, which some people do because it's so hard to draw. Things like that. So I do look at it very closely. And then if you get past that stage, the next thing is I usually give 1 or 2 commissions, and then we see how that goes. We'll see how quickly you get them back, how responsive you are to changes, what the format is, and then if we go from there. So, I have basically 3 or 4 people I use constantly, and then I have about 20 that I use as needed, mostly for like the bestiaries and other books that require a lot of art. But like for the Year of Legends, I actually have 3 artists that I've been using for this. I have 3 core artists that are doing pretty much all of the art for that, including the covers. And that's my core team right now. But if we're doing a new Battle Zoo Bestiary, which we're going to be doing, I can't give it to just 3 people, take too long. So I will give it to some of the others. So that's how I do it. So just get contact with me and send it to us, and I'll take a look at it. So first topic is a chat that I saw, which is, did you see that the Book of Many Things is coming out January 5th or early January, and the answer is yes. It says that in October 27th, that WoTC announced a delay of the shipment of the Deck of Many Things due to the product not meeting our manufacturer standards, aka the cards were miscut, damaged, and bent.
You would think that Wizards of the Coast would have a pretty good bead on printing cards. Yeah.
I don't think they know anything about cards, though.
Magic the Gathering. Hello.
No, they have no idea what they're doing when it comes to cards. I'm joking. Of course, that's the whole thing. Imagine if that came out, they would have gotten raked over the coals. They were like, I don't know what happened there. It's obviously a different printing plant. It's obviously these are more tarot-based cards than Magic cards. These have foil. They're much higher quality, but. Whatever. I mean, that's a costly mistake. They missed Christmas. On top of that, they were in sealed boxes. I don't know if you saw how it came, Derik, but
I'm looking at it now, the product.
Yeah, it's actually because it comes with the book. This is not the book, but it comes with the book and then the deck, and I think a few other things. And they put it in, like, those FedEx packages that you wrap, and then to open them, you have to tear open. It's basically that. It's a package that you buy and then you tear it open and pull everything out. So they had to reprint not just those cards, but then they had to unpackage them and then repackage them. So what a nightmare.
Yeah. It's also, as I look at this, it's one of those products where I go, who needs this? Like, this to me is like, I don't know what the term is, but it's like a nostalgia porn. I don't, it's like, remember the Deck of Many Things? Remember how cool that was?
Yeah, but most people don't know what the Deck of Many Things is.
It's like random tables, though. It is cool because it can do random stuff.
Which is fine, but I mean, the Deck of Many Things was like maybe 2 columns, maybe 3 columns of text in the back of the DMG.
Yeah,
okay,
it's very small.
And now it's a 192-page book, which provides details on the history of the Deck of Many Things. It also includes how to incorporate it into a Deck of Many Things style D&D campaigns. Like, what the hell?
I think that's. I don't know. I think that's cool. I think it could be good.
That's the whole Deck of Many Things right there.
Right.
I always loved the expanded Decks of Many Things. In Encyclopedia Magica, they had a tarot Deck of Many Things with even more Deck of Many Things effects in it. I love the
Deck of Many Things.
It's so random, and I like it. I don't know. I think it could be good. Plus, if I remember correctly, that in a twist of irony. Now, I may be wrong because I don't exactly remember who WoTC puts in charge of different things, and I also have heard that sometimes the person you think is in charge isn't really in charge, but they may have had the same person who Paizo had originally looking at Stolen Fate, the Harrow AP looking at it. So it might be really good, right?
Maybe. I just think it's one of those things where it's like, why are we just continually going back to the well?
It's also $100, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Does it come with like a really deluxe deck and
the deck is very nice. The deck is very nice.
Yeah, it's 22 of the original cards plus 44 new cards for your Deck of Many Things.
Okay.
They're like full size, big tarot card size.
Like, think of a deluxe tarot deck.
All right.
That's what they look like.
And you said that the book is 90 some pages. So
192.
190.
Yeah, 192
page. Because 90 seemed really short for that.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, so it's 192 pages. Is that the same as Big B's giant book?
I don't know.
Because if it is, we can do a price check on Big Me Presents Giants, which is $70 and does not have a Harrow deck in it.
I just don't understand. Okay, because again, my knowledge here might be now. This is things that even like my group didn't really enjoy or appreciate. Deck of Many Things, of course, has come up a couple of times throughout the course of the campaign. But it's like, when I think about people today who are playing 5th edition, okay?
I think, yes, it's 192 for Big B.
Okay. When I think about people who are playing 5th edition today, and I think about the kind of things that people like, and I also think about the kind of complaints that I hear about, that people have about the game, I go, why are these people buying a product where, you draw the King of Spades and all forms of wealth, carried or owned, disappear completely?
Well, there's a whole section of how you can. First, the deck is different now. There's a
I'm reading from
there's a less deadly version of the deck and a more deadly version, and there's ways and rules for you to make your own deck.
Right. So they make it impotent to make it more sellable, and then it loses the whole point of it anyways.
Of course.
But that way you could be like, we played with the deck of many things, and it was cool.
Dude, I played with the deck of many things, and I remember, I'll give you my deck of many things with Chris Beamer. And I was like, okay, how many cards are you going to draw? He's like, I'll draw a 2. And the first card he drew was, I forgot, it's the one that you have to then draw more. You have to roll a 1d4 and then draw that many more cards. And you had to. And then he rolled the 3. So he's like, okay, now you're drawing 4 cards. And he's like, oh, no.
I don't know that I have anything, but I do know that at one point in time, a character of mine at some point in time drew the tower. And I think that gives you your own keep.
Yeah, there was... There's a whole bunch. But the point is, this is what, if you haven't seen this already, everyone knows this, or if you don't, I'm going to explain it to everyone. WoTC is putting out anything that they can IP as their own, as D&D only, and something they can take over, use, and protect. Like... they're coming out with mind flayers. They're coming out with beholders. They're coming out with deck of many things. Like anything that they can label as themselves. They're not going to come out with a goblin book. They're just not. They're not going to come out with anything that they can't label as their own and only their own. Although if they were smart, they can go the Disney route, and they should come out with a goblin book, and they should come out with an elf book, and then they can say, yes, now we own elves, and you can't publish anything to do with elves because we own it.
I feel like nobody can try to own elves.
I know. You know what I mean. But they can...
Yeah, but maybe for something slightly more in between.
Yes.
Like griffins. It's like
right.
They are a mythological Greek creature. Nobody can
own.
Really own griffins, but maybe somebody could try to claim that they do, whereas nobody can claim that they own
that's
elves.
What Disney does, because everything Disney puts out is public IP, and then they brand it with their styling.
Oh, sure, but they say if it looks exactly like ours that we own it. Correct. They don't say that you can never tell the story of Snow White or dwarves. They just say if it's like named Dopey or Grumpy.
Yes, but not everyone knows
it looks like there's Snow White.
And it prevents people from putting out a competing product just for the fear of getting sued. And that's why they're putting it out. They're putting out Deck of Many Things is because it's pretty cool. People like it. It's also got a physical product that they can attach to it, which is a deck, and it comes in a box. So it sort of has the FOMO
it's like
blind box opening experience where it's fun.
I have a question. Are they selling this direct?
They sell it direct and in stores.
Oh, okay, and in stores. I was like, it's starting to sound like Secret Layers products, which are from MTG, which bypass.
Just set for $5 that they sold the Deck of Many Things direct in the 2000s for $20.
I have
but the prices of everything have gone up since then, of course.
Yeah. And also,
and it wouldn't have had 66 cards. So I feel like if the 192 page Big B is $70, if that's the new normal,
it is.
Then the question is, would you also pay an additional $30 to get 66 very deluxe tarot size cards on top of that? I think the answer is maybe. Like, how much does the Paizo Harrow deck cost? The new one of that is made by Firat Solhan, who drew all of our dragons, and is $40 for a 54 card set.
Yeah.
So for the print edition, and
again,
it's an upsell.
Right now, it looks like it has a 5-star rating on Paizo.com from one person. But
maybe I very much don't. I mean, obviously, I do not understand the 5e market, but I just go, is this really what the 5e player base wants? And it just seems to me that the answer was no. But
here's what they want.
It'll probably sell like gangbusters anyways. And
it's the perfect upsell, because the different upsells they have right now is you can buy a regular book or you can buy a deluxe edition. The problem with the deluxe edition is like, yeah, it looks cool, and yes, they sell them, but I guarantee they don't sell that many. I know the numbers. They don't sell that many. So in this case, you can buy a $70 book, or for $100, you can get the book and the tarot cards, the Deck of Many Thing cards.
Yeah.
It's only $30 more. You're already thinking it's a sunk cost of $70. So for $30 more, do you want this cool deck? And maybe there's some other stuff. I forgot what else, if there's anything else in there.
And there's no other way to get the deck.
And there's no other way to get the deck. So of course you're gonna, not of course, but way more people, way more, are going to do the upgrade to get the deck with the book because that is unique and the only way to get the deck, and the deck is cool, as opposed to, oh, it's a special edition book and has the exact same stuff as the regular. I'll pass. That is what it is. It is nothing more than an upsell. And I hate to say it, or I will say it, it's a good way to upsell. It's actually very smart. And I would do the same. I hate to say it, like, that is the right way to do it. I mean, $30 is not unreasonable. Like, if it was $50 for the book, $100 for the deck and the book, no way. But if the book is already $70 anyhow, $30 is not that bad.
Again, it's less than Paizo's Harrow deck that has slightly fewer cards. After an upsell, obviously you should give some kind of discount when you're combining two things into an upsell. Yeah. So it feels to me like if we're going with the new prices are, I don't think that the price is what's out of line. The question is how many fans are like Steven and me, who love the most random things that existed in D&D and are like, this book could be for me. Right. Like, they've put out a lot of things that maybe could have been for me, like Spelljammer, Planescape, and this book, this Deck of Many Things book. I just kept saying all the other card types. Now, I've been waiting because I heard bad things about Spelljammer. I want to make sure I hear enough good things about Planescape before checking it out, potentially. But they're putting out a lot of things I like. That doesn't mean everybody else does.
That's what I don't understand. Again, I don't follow every 5e per thing. But when I look and I go, okay, let me see. Let me get this straight. You guys did Spelljammer. You did Dragonlance. You did Planescape. And now you're doing the Deck of Many Things. Who the hell are you making these products for?
I think they're making them for both the older crowd and to introduce these IPs, which they own completely outright, then they can then reuse. And hopefully if one of them catches fire, then they can say, okay, Dragonlance is turned out to be great. I mean, they are coming out with more books, but it's like, we can maybe turn that into a Netflix TV show. We can turn that into a miniseries. By the way, there has been a lot of rumors that the D&D second movie might be happening. Okay.
Yeah, I saw recently that one of the actors thought that it was going to happen, probably.
Yeah, and you know what? My brother is best friends with the producer of the D&D movie. And I'll have him, I'm trying to get him on the show. The guy who produced the D&D movie he loves Dungeons and Dragons. And it was like a passion
project. It was very
project.
Clear how passionate they were about it from the movie, which I have, as I've mentioned before, I have now watched it. And it's very clear they were passionate about it. And they just need to do it for cheaper. That's all they
got to do it for cheaper.
So basically, these product launches are just them throwing darts in the dark and seeing which ones stick, and then
1,000% yes.
I think it's not just darts, though. It's a combination of what Steven's saying that, and just also covering their bases for nostalgia. Because there are enough people now who have purchasing power who were young when these were coming out. Right? Like, I'm tempted by a Planescape if I hear from enough people that it's good, because I really like Planescape. So whereas I might not be tempted by Big B's Giants, because I have a lot of books that are about giants. I don't have a particular attachment to Big B, or in particular any of the D&D nostalgia giant stuff. And so I'm less likely to check that out automatically on the name than I would be on Planescape, because that was a big thing for me when I was younger.
So I guess what I don't understand is, very famously, TSR, for a variety of reasons, but TSR, the people who used to own Dungeons and Dragons, were stretched in too many different directions. They were trying to pull their customer base in too many different directions. Here's a Dark Sun product. Here's a Planescape product. Here's a Mystara product. Here's a Forgotten Realms product. Here's a Greyhawk product. And the fact is nobody was playing in all those campaigns at once, right? And they were creating all these products for it. Why is 5e doing the same thing here? I just don't get it.
But are they? Because
TSR
kept going along those products, where this is just more of a simpler plate.
I don't know.
They're doing it. I'll answer it again. So I was talking to my brother a lot during the strikes. He's a costume designer in Hollywood. For those who don't know, he did the last Ghostbusters movie. You can look him up, Danny Glicker. He's been nominated for Academy Awards. He's pretty famous. Long story short, he and I had long conversations about how Hollywood is now changing into IP factory. It is literally just turning into an IP factory, which is intellectual property. You don't know what IP means, and that's really quite evident. I mean, take a look at all the movies that are coming out now. They all have something attached to them. It's extremely rare for them to come out with just a comedy or just an action movie. Everything has a world attached to it, or an IP, or something they can build off on, and because that is where the money is at. And I hate to say it, but it's starting to affect not just television and movies, but it's now leaking into games. It's leaking into books more. It's going to start leaking into all versions of entertainment. And it's only going to keep getting worse, because once you get an IP that you can reuse over and over again, you can go the Warhammer route, which is, okay, not only can I use this IP, then I can start licensing this IP to other people, which is free money, and do the Star Wars route. Have them print the action figures, have them make the pajamas, have them have the Happy Meals. We just get paid. That is why they're doing it, because they're looking for IP that they can own, that's unique to them, that maybe connects, and then they can reuse forever. That's it. I know.
I mean, given Baldur's Gate 3 made them so much money, I can see why you would want to have IP that you can license out.
They didn't do anything for Baldur's Gate 3. It's free money. Free money. They're going to triple down on that now after Baldur's Gate 3 saved their bacon in quarter 3 and made them millions of dollars, and they didn't do a damn thing. You better believe it. And I hate to break it to you, everyone's going to do this. It's only going to get worse. Anyhow, next topic, which is
but before we get into the Ollie had a super chat.
Okay. The Ollie super chat is, what is each of your favorite 5e supplements? There must be some very good ones.
Well, I will say that I actually thought Xanathar's Guide to Everything was fine. I thought it was kind of, it added scope to the game. I thought that was fine. The monster books, again, I'm not the right demographic for monster books. I could take it or leave it. In terms of like the sort of like I wanted to like Mythic Odyssey of Theros because I love Theros and the Magic the Gathering world, but I have found like the Ravnica book, the Eberron book, the Theros book, the Dragonlance book. I found all those campaign setting books pretty lacking. And as far as the adventures go, I've never actually played any of these, except I thought that the one they did that was just a reprint of all the classic modules, Yawning Portal, that was sweet, but that's just because those were already, that's Forge of Fury, Sunless Citadel, Lost Caverns of Sojcanth, and White Plume Mountain and stuff. So I thought that was a pretty good book.
Yeah, I like that one a lot too. I mean, I actually like the Theros book. I have the Theros book right here.
No, I bought it.
It was pretty good.
I didn't hate it.
I know which is my favorite. It's right here. This one, Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I love this book.
I was thinking that was one of your favorites. Book. You talk about it a lot.
It's a good book. It's really well done.
And, they get a bad rap sometimes because of foisting a lot onto the GM. But I think that the 5e like core books as a product that with a goal of building the audience, getting in new people who've never played a tabletop RPG to give it a try and be able to get into it, they were wildly successful. And sure, they do have their flaws, but I think that they sometimes when we're analyzing and when people in the field are analyzing from a game design perspective and look into kind of too deeply into some of those flaws, we miss the fact that they were commercially very successful, and not just from the brand name, because they were much more successful than 4E, which I know Derik loves for the design decisions in it.
Right.
But of all the 5e
that's a great point, Mark.
supplements, we forgot about the best one of all, which is
one?
dragons. Battles.
Oh yeah, well I'm not going to count
dragons.
that. I'm sure they want us to talk about the
Oh,
WoTC
it
ones.
just says what's your
If
favorite
you're allowed
5e
to go into
supplements?
third-party supplements, there's so many amazing third-party supplements,
Dude,
and not just made by us.
You get to play a dragon.
I was assuming
It's our
that they meant-
best-selling book by a mile.
I was assuming they meant the other thing. I did see somebody mention Goes to the Salt Marsh. I thought this was actually pretty good. Again, but the thing is, I mean, I'm getting off on a rant here, but it's like a D&D adventure for characters of levels 1 to 12. 1 to 12, that's not an adventure. It's a campaign.
The entire adventure path.
Yeah,
well,
it's like
keep in mind that levels 1 to 5 you can get through in like 2 days. So
anyways,
it's hard to say, but yeah, it is. If we did third party, I have a shelf full of third party stuff here that I can go through. But
yeah, I actually have a very opposite opinion of a lot of people. Like the early 5e adventures, like the Dragon Queen one and the Tiamat one. Like I actually like those adventures.
What?
Yeah, because they didn't have a boilerplate path. It was just like, hey, here's a place. There's some monsters. They live here. It was very like my style. It's very old school. I mean, because when 5e first came out, I'm talking about like 2014 or whatever, 2015 5e. I don't think they were trying at all to try to capture a new audience. I think they were just trying to capture back people like me who had drifted away, gone to Pathfinder or whatever, or left during 4e or left during 3e even, and said, this is my D&D. This is second edition. Feats were optional. Like it was all. Fifth edition to me was sort of like the apology tour, and modules like Horde of the Dragon Queen, Rise of the Tiamat, and all that other stuff. I feel like we're sort of basically being like homages to those classic adventures to try to get, quite frankly, older guys like me to come back to the game. And so I very much, and even if we think about some of those events, Curse of Strahd, we talked about the nostalgia play, Curse of Strahd, Salt Marsh, those are all, by the way, for people who don't know this, those are all classic adventures. Obviously, everyone knows about Ravenloft, but Salt Marsh, Sinister Secrets of Salt Marsh is a classic. It's a classic D&D.
No, they've been doing the nostalgia play all along. That's why I agreed with Steven that that's where they were going with these recent releases as well. I mean, it worked for them. I think that functionally they must be doing some market research, but they might not know exactly what in the secret sauce made this new edition so popular. Like they might not know for sure.
They have no idea.
So therefore repeating the kinds of things they did near the beginning of it when it started getting popular, no matter what, is something that I would expect to see when you don't know for sure exactly what made it successful.
Okay, but we're almost 10 years into the edition and they're still taking random shots in the dark.
Yes.
That feels crazy to me.
I guarantee. Let me tell you a story. When I was working at Blizzard and I was talking to them, and this is right when StarCraft First Edition blew up worldwide, especially in South Korea. And if people don't know, StarCraft was the culture of South Korea to levels you can't imagine. That was where they started to play StarCraft professionally. They would fill in arenas. It would be on TV. It was on advertising for everything. It was like co-branded with like chips and food and everything. It was I remember because everywhere.
We were flying somewhere on Korean Airlines and I was like, I wonder if our plane is going to be co-branded with StarCraft.
Yeah,
and everyone else on my trip was like, Mark, that's a really offensive thing to say. Just because it's in South Korea doesn't mean it might be co-branded with StarCraft. I was like, no, I heard that some of them are. They're like, you're just making that up. We went and it just had StarCraft stuff that was all on the plane.
And so anyhow, when I was at Blizzard, I was like, why is StarCraft so popular in South Korea? And they all looked at me, and this is senior management. They say, we have no idea. They're like, we have no idea why.
You got to appreciate the honesty at least. But yeah, I mean, interesting. By the way, Brood War, the first expansion for the original StarCraft, almost made me like flunk out of college because. It was so good, and I played it so much, and I didn't go to class, and yeah. Anyways,
so anyhow, second topic, and then we're gonna get to the main one. Don't worry, I promise. And this is all sort of related to WoTC's incompetence, because first
Well,
we talk about
I wouldn't
their,
say it's completely incompetence, right? Some of the things that you've grilled them for before
Right. They're
have been
incompetence.
smart business moves that are just kind of nasty towards consumers, right?
Right.
well,
Yeah,
well, the first
they're-
one was they just messed up the printing. This one is interesting. So
Right. I just want to point out that the game is bigger than it's ever been. People adore it more than they ever have. It's more in the mainstream than it has ever been. So you're correct. Also, it's making more money for them. So on both sides of the equation, we need to define what shitting the bed is here.
okay.
But continue.
So it turns out that last week, WoTC was caught using AI in Magic the Gathering twice. Once they were using AI, and once it was stolen art. Now, the stolen art, I don't blame them. Basically, there was an artist who's a Magic artist who did a couple cards for them, had a picture, and in the background, it was a picture of basically a staircase. And
he used a background from another.
Right. And one of the other artists who also works with WoTC and Magic said, hey, why is my painting in your painting? And sure enough, the internet exploded. They took it and found that the artist who stole the painting, used his painting as a background and then changed it, but not enough, not even close to enough that you could tell that it was the original background. Now, this is very common, especially for backgrounds where you will use reference images, especially for things that are complex, like a trebuchet, or like something that is you can't just draw from memory, that you actually need to use as a reference. But then you change it or modify it so it's not obviously being taken from someone else's work. And not only was this guy caught, but then he said publicly that, he does this all the time. He uses other people's arts for reference. And then he scrubbed his entire public presence off the internet, because I guarantee people were going to start looking and finding that he's done this for other artists. Right. And now he's gone. The first artist, by the way, I guess they were paid probably by WoTC, because it's all been taken care of. And both these people did Magic cards, multiple Magic cards, and this card's already out and it's a common, so there's nothing they can do. It's already done.
Right. A couple of things. Number one, there's this line, right, between what is inspiration, what is copying. And I think that is something that is always going, Ed Sheeran just had to defend against a lawsuit. Well, not just, but in the last couple of years, because of this chord progression that he used. And he some artist was and I was and he's like, you can't copyright a chord progression. That's not me stealing your song just because you used 4 chords and I use those same 4 chords. So there's an there's a gap between inspiration. And I do agree that if it gets too close, that there is a point to be made about, is this the right thing or not? From my reading of the Twitter, from the person's account, my guess is, and also if you look at the thing, honestly, I don't think the photo, I don't think it looks, yes, it is clearly inspired by it. I don't think it looks like a copy. I actually do think it looks somewhat different. But
it's an exact copy. The windows in the same location, the stairs are the same. If you do an overlay, it's very obviously exactly the same.
Yeah. Again, I think that there's enough creative differences and it's in the background that to me it's not a big deal. I don't know anything about the law, but I will say this. I don't think this person would have gotten in any real trouble, but I do think they would have gotten destroyed in the social media sphere. And so that is likely why they, ejected from and deleted their Twitter or whatever, their X account, because that people are just so protective. I mean, rightfully so, I guess, of artists, and especially nowadays when, it's hey, it's bad enough that we already have all these bots and scrapers stealing our art. Now we have to have, people stealing it too. But,
so this is pretty common in the world of art. So I don't know if anyone knows this, but when Ray Parker Jr. released Ghostbusters, which I'm sure everyone's heard once or twice in their lives, they were sued by Huey Lewis, saying that you took the riff, the melody, primarily the bass line, from his I Want a New Drug song and put it into Ghostbusters. He was sued, and Huey Lewis won. He won the lawsuit because he did. But wait, there's a second crazy part, is that the lawsuit was sealed. And then a few years ago, Huey Lewis said publicly how much he was paid by Ray Parker Jr., and he wasn't allowed. And then Ray Parker Jr. sued Huey Lewis, and he won that lawsuit. So this still's been going on to this day, where they get sued.
my favorite music lawsuit is between Queen and David Bowie and Vanilla Ice.
Vanilla Ice, yeah.
And my favorite part about this, of course, is this is the doom 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 da da doom 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 da da doom doom. And Vanilla Ice, said, "Oh, I didn't copy it. Mine's different." And of course, the courts disagreed.
Exactly the same.
But here's my favorite part. I saw an interview decades later with Vanilla Ice, and he said, as a result of that, he had to pay all these fines. But what his legal team basically figured out was was cheaper to just buy the rights to Under Pressure. Vanilla Ice owns Under Pressure. He bought it from them. So he didn't have to, because now he was the copyright holder. And he said in this interview, which was decades later, he said, "I have made so much more money on the residuals from owning the Under Pressure license than I ever did from Ice Ice Baby." Yeah. He's like, so it was the best thing for me financially ever. And I was like, that is such a funny and awesome story. But yeah.
Oh, weird.
Or the other one is there's a thing that they did. I can't remember the name of what's it called? The duet between Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney.
I know which one. Yeah.
Oh, say what you want. Yeah, that's one. And I guess while they were filming that, like, Paul McCartney gave this interview where he's like, he was talking with Michael Jackson and talking basically about Michael
Jackson owns the entire Beatles catalog.
How to make money in this. Michael Jackson's like, how to make money in this industry.
Right.
And Paul McCartney was like, you gotta buy the rights to songs, man. And then Michael Jackson went and bought all the Beatles.
He bought he has to buy songs. So Michael Jackson owns all of the Beatles. Which is insane.
He's like, oh, good idea. I'll go buy the rights to all of your music. Yeah.
So my question about this is, like, how much can WoTC really be able to police all possible people that their artists that they're hiring are stealing from? Obviously, if they hire an artist who steals or uses AI to steal other things and it's against their policy, they should never hire that artist again. But how much can they afford to pay to do a encyclopedic search of the internet to find?
We'll do it for you guys. We'll as an example. Mark's right. Example: when you get an art submission, Stephen.
Yes.
How do you know that art isn't copied?
A few ways. First, usually what we ask for is so weird that there's nothing to copy it from.
All right, fair.
No, seriously. I also give.
Yeah, but what if somebody
I'm not done.
draws something and then they traced it from something else?
I'm not done.
Right.
I give extensive, very long. In fact, artists have said to me that I give the longest, most detailed art orders they've ever seen. That is another thing I do.
It's probably not a compliment from them, though.
No, it is. In fact, they use mine several of mine. They use mine as an example to show other clients.
I love your artists. Then I always wrote ones that were too long when I first started at Paizo, and so I was told that I needed to make them shorter because the artists were getting
too bad,
under pressure from having too much of a description.
Yeah, too bad. That's part of the. Then I don't work with those artists, quite frankly.
I think that artist is cool.
I give them full creativity with our artwork, but I'll say it needs to be a barbarian with piranhas coming out of his arms, wearing cloth armor. You can do the rest. So that's something else. You give enough specific items. The other thing is, when I get it back, it has to be. I always ask for layered Photoshop files. So I can vouch for that. That's one of my artists, by the way. He's saying, "Hey."
So you don't even get you don't get like a flattened file. You actually
nope. I never do. I almost reject them. I asked it. I also look to see, because I'll get feedback, and so I'll get lots of feedback, and I'll see them doing it. And I don't know. I can just sort of tell after a while. Like, you've been doing it long enough, is that I can tell if someone. I can tell when it's a little fishy. I'll leave it at that. It's like I can sometimes tell when it seems a little fishy, because I might ask for specific things that they don't seem to get back to me fast enough with, or it's too hard for them to draw, or something like that. It's sort of a feel, but if you give enough detail, you're asking for weird stuff, you get layered Photoshop files, hopefully it's not being traced. But tracing is okay. As I said, like, if I ask for someone to give me a trebuchet, I expect them to trace it. In fact, I'll give them reference. I'll even say, use this trebuchet as reference, but make sure it's in your style. And I'm fine with that. You know, that's legal, and that is fine. The big problem is that when it comes to art and all these, you know, like people copying from each other, is that they don't get paid that much. So you get paid, I found out it's $1,000 per piece of art for Magic, from what I believe. I've been told. They get to keep the rights, so they get to resell it, because they can often get somewhere between $1,000 to $3,000 for the original art, especially if it's oil or, you know, not digital. So that's the other thing. Is that so they get to resell it, and, you know, they could also go and like sign. But to answer Mark's question, very easy. You have to have it in the contract where it says, if you're caught using someone else's, A, you don't get paid. B, we can sue you for back payments for all, you know, like anything we've ever bought from you, because now it destroys not just this card, but the reputation of all your past cards. And that's kind of it. I mean, unfortunately, the only way you can really enforce it is to tell the artist that they're responsible for not lying, and that will hold up in a court of law, and you can sue them and you'd win. Now, obviously, I don't know if you'd actually get the money back, because that's a whole other issue, but you basically, there is a lot of trust when you're working with creative people. You need to have trust that they are creating something semi or wholly original, that they're not copying directly, or if they are, they're using it as reference only. That's it. Yeah. I mean, you can't search the internet. You just can't. I mean, it's unfortunate, you know.
And I have to imagine, especially when it comes to Magic the Gathering, they're going through a lot of cards, and there's several hundred per every set, and they've got sets in the pipeline. In fact, this art was probably made years ago, and so it like there's no way that they have that level of checking things. So I mean, maybe if it is a copy, and it is, you know, by the standards of art, a copy, that's very shitty on this artist for doing that, obviously. But I don't put any of that fault really on Wizards of the Coast.
Yes and no. I mean, it's definitely not. No, actually, I don't put any. Yeah, I'll put 5% on Wizards, because
I'll take 5%.
Yeah,
I'll take,
because 5%. they need to also talk to the artist and make sure like that they're getting.
Right. There's also like a buck stops here kind of idea of that, right? Like someone has to be responsible, and at the end of the day, I'm giving my money to you, you know.
Yeah. But, so they have a little bit of responsibility. The bigger issue was that they were caught using AI art in their upcoming Tomb Raider promotion, where they showed like an 80s basement with Tomb Raider posters, and it was like an 80s TV with wood paneling, and it was so obviously AI art, because the feet on it was a television, like an old time television on a like credenza. The credenza only had 2 feet instead of 4. The feet looked terrible, and the television had a picture behind the picture of Lara Croft. They literally took a picture of Lara Croft and pasted it on the TV, and didn't even bother like fully cropping it correctly. It was incredibly easy to tell, and you just knew it was AI art. Now, this could have been anything. It could have been the advertising agency. You know, this could have been a very easy mistake, and it could have had maybe nothing even to do with WoTC.
It probably was the advertising agency. Yeah. Like, how would it be? How would it be the actual company who decides how the advertising goes? I know that when the Intellect Devourer piece of art was stolen from Paizo in the D&D movie promo, it was absolutely not anyone at WoTC who stole that piece of art. It was only one of the advertising agencies that did.
Correct. So, but the thing is that this is just gonna, I mean, I'll do a whole episode on this because I got more than enough, but like, this is just going to keep happening, because I hate to say it, as someone who's always looking for, I do use clip art that I purchase legally, but, you know, when you say, okay, I need an old-fashioned television, you know, an 80s TV in a basement with wood paneling, you might not get that much. So your options are either A, you don't do that, B, you commission it, which takes a while and you don't have time, or C, you go to, an AI artist's and it does it in 5 or 10 minutes. And I hate to say it, this is going to start happening a lot more frequently, and it already is. And it's going to get harder and harder to tell. Now, my example of saying I need to have a barbarian with piranha arms, shooting piranhas at you, that's going to be very hard for AR to do. Not impossible, believe it or not. With enough prompting and work, you can get it, but it's very hard. But if you're saying I need a TV with wood paneling in the background, it's pretty easy for AR to do. And you're going to get more and more of that stuff. In fact, built into Photoshop, it's called adaptive fill, where generative fill, where you could just drag an area. Say there's a sky, you can literally just drag a part of the sky and say clouds, and it just draws clouds, and then you can press buttons until you find the one you like. And it's damn good, and it looks perfect. And it's like, well, where did that come from? Who knows? But it's coming from somewhere. Right. Someone's getting that. Now, to be fair, Adobe claims that their generative fill AI model, which goes to their Sensei AI, is only trained on all of the stuff from their Adobe stock, which is fantastically large. Yeah, which means they paid for it. Yeah, they can probably do it because it's like them or Microsoft. There's very few companies out there that have, like, Microsoft owns Getty, so they can do it. Adobe can do it. There's a few out there, but that's it. There's a few companies that have such large libraries that they can actually create generative art from their own libraries and not steal, that they own. I just want to say, not that I love Adobe because software as a service is horrible, but I will say that they're not Dolly or Midjourney in that way, where they're just kind of scraping this art without any sort of licensing or fee. They're using art basically that they did pay the artist for and said, hey, we're going to buy this from you and use it. So yeah. Anyways. Anyhow. Yeah. So that was an interesting side topic, Stephen. Yes, we're going to get to we have one more side topic that we were going to do really fast, which was a pretty interesting one that is related to, I think, Stephen's thesis why he thinks that WoTC does deserve the criticism in a side way. So I think it'll lead us into the main topic, which is Adventure Time was making a tabletop RPG. And up until recently, they were making a new tabletop RPG that had like a yes and mechanic where you would roll a die that would have like a yes, and there was an and a but and some other things on the other die. It sounded very, very narrative, story focused, very like improv-y. And, again, for anybody who doesn't know, by the way, Adventure Time was a cartoon, beloved cartoon series that was created by, I think, Dan Harmon, who was on a Cartoon Network and was very like, had a lot of Easter eggs and a lot of like really, quaint, nerdy references. It was very much like a sort of a beloved thing. And so, yeah, that's what Adventure Time was. Yeah. And anyway, that's a cool, Mark. They were making it was announced. They were making a new RPG. Sweet. That they were just making themselves. There was probably going to be like an extra zine with some info on how to run it in 5e. However, the Kickstarter, which is about to launch, has now announced that 5e is the main thing. And whether or not they're even going to make that new RPG is in question. If it is, it'll be like a side tangential thing that is included. But now it's mainly going to be in 5th edition, which, like, I don't know, like, based on, I was not as much into Adventure Time as some people, but it doesn't really seem like it's like the more 5e-ish, do big combat style of resolution on the show for its plot lines usually. So I am going to solve this real quick because you know me, I love quirky and weird RPGs. Okay. Yes, I said Dan Harmon. I meant Pendleton Ward. Dan Harmon is Rick and Morty. Yes, I got the two confused. They're both kind of sticky figures. Anyways, here's why. Because some very intrepid group of game designers were like, we have this great idea for a game, and they started pitching it, and they all love it, and they're all just sitting there jazzed to play it, and they're doing all the stuff that Mark is talking about, and then right as Kickstarter's approaching, it's too late to really change anything massive at this point. Somebody there finally realized something, or maybe they pitched it to somebody and they went, guys, gals, you're creating a game with custom dice. This will never fucking sell.
And the fact of the matter is, once you create bespoke dice for your game, it is really, 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 really hard to get traction with that. And people do not like bespoke dice. People do not like because it can't use your online game generators. You can't use your custom crystal dice that you bought for $200. You can't customize each one to your individual character or liking because those are the proprietary dice and you can't do anything with them. And a lot of times the proprietary dice are proprietary dice. So other people aren't going to make them. Also, it's such a small niche market that no one's going to make them anyways. Long story short, if you're going to make an RPG, if you use proprietary dice, it's a non-starter. And somebody must have realized we gotta backpedal. And they said, we don't have time to do anything else. And then they were like, 5e. That is what I am assuming happened. I don't know that this is 100% obviously.
Well, they said,
could it just be that they thought they weren't going to make enough money anyway if it wasn't 5e, and that they saw how well 5e Kickstarters are doing and are just, let's make it 5e and get the big bucks?
I mean, I maybe, I don't know. I mean, obviously that is reasonable things because obviously 5e Kickstarters do much better than, hey, we've got our own quirky little bespoke thing and we want to get you and your players to learn this whole new system. We'll pass, or to create another, GM heartbreaker where the GM gets really excited. They go out, they kickstart it. The game comes. They're so excited. They spend like a week learning it. And they're like, all right, guys, I've got a great new game. And everyone's like, no, can we do it? I just want to take another level in Warlock, right? Like that is the reality for a lot of GMs out there. And maybe they said, and
that's, I think, related. It ties into the main topic because D&D is the elephant in the room. It's the cultural, it has its claws in the cultural zeitgeist in a way that like it means a lot to me and probably all three of us, Dungeons and Dragons. Even now, when I haven't played it as much recently because of it, but I've been playing derivatives of it or things that have been inspired by it in a deep number of ways. And so, like, the fact that it is such a 500-pound gorilla, that things like this happen all the time, and we're not surprised about it. Like, nobody was surprised when they saw that. Maybe some people who were pro indie RPGs were a little sad that happened, but maybe a little happy for the people who did it, that maybe they're going to make more money now. I don't know. But the point is, it has to be related to the topic of that Stephen has brought up of whether or not people should give this much criticism, that whoever the predominant voice is in the field, I think, bears more scrutiny than anyone else in that field.
So real quick, before we start, do like and subscribe. We have almost 300 people watching and only 64 likes. So come on, people.
Well, maybe they're saying they don't like what we're talking about, Stephen. They don't like us.
Do you not have phones? Do you not have like buttons? Come on. And Super Chats will be answered first. And do check out the Black Friday sale at battlezoo.com. Turkey 25% off almost everything. Oh, and Mark, did you know we released Jewel of the Indigo Isle for Foundry for 5e today? I released it.
Yeah, I knew that kept being almost done and kept having a few more things.
Completely done.
That's
originally
fantastic.
we were going to release it like 1, 2, 3. Like I did, first part, second part, third. We just finished it all. I was like, okay, I got a new guy.
That's great.
He got it done. So that one's
done and done.
And the World of Battlezoo Indigo Isles 5e is done.
Wow. That's a lot that was done.
Oh, you have no idea how busy I've been. I probably won't release it because it's a holiday, and I just releasing one Foundry module over holiday is probably enough for me in case there's problems. I'll release that one next week, like Monday or Tuesday. Don't worry, I'm gonna release that one soon too because I'm also away for PAX. But
don't worry, you also have to release only Intelligent Weapons next Friday while you're away at PAX.
I have to release that too.
That's an easy ancestry that totally doesn't have the most exceptions and weird stuff in it of any of the ones we've done.
It's only the most complex thing we've ever done. By the way, that's all done. I had that well planned in advance. If you've been watching the Discords, Mark, between me and the team.
Yeah, I know you have. Delusion King points out the Eldermon rap also just finished.
And we just released the Elder rap. Well, you got to see that thing, Mark. Derek, you got to see the Elder rap.
Yeah.
You want to post the Elder rap while I start?
You can watch the whole thing now, and
we'll post the URL in the.
And it will break
chat.
you.
It will break you. Mark.
It
and I
is
got
so
a
terrible.
really good video editor. How good is that video editor?
The video editor is great.
Oh,
I am
man.
terrible. And so now
All right, to be clear, Keith, we're not playing it here. They're just linking.
Yeah.
They're just linking.
No, it's like 3
yeah.
minutes long. I'm not playing it here. Okay.
yeah, we're not playing it here. We're going to move into the main topic.
Right.
And Steven, I want to hear your thesis because Derik kind of made his rebuttal earlier on.
Okay.
Right. I tried.
Well, we'll get into it. So the main thesis is that I was reading comments last week, and it was actually a comment from one of our regulars who said that he was a little upset that we've been
name drop him.
I don't remember. That he was so upset that we've been so negative on WoTC and D&D. And I actually wrote a rather large response, and I was thinking about it a lot. I said, actually, I love Dungeons and Dragons. It has been the cornerstone of my life. Look at what I do for a living. I make products for Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder. Of course I love it. But this is why I am so critical, because Dungeons and Dragons, and there's several books. There's Designers and Dragons. It's a great set of books. It goes through the history of D&D. It also goes through the cultural impact of Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons in the last 49 years has had such a major impact in our culture worldwide. It's actually so big, I don't think people quite understand. Like, I'll go through real quick. You have video games. Okay, well, pretty much most of the mantras in video games, like attribute points, hit points, armor class, fantasy creatures, all that. It's all comes from Dungeons and Dragons, okay? And some of the original video games that came out in the early 80s were literally people saying that they wanted to take Dungeons and Dragons and make it into a video game because they loved it so much, okay? Many interviews. World of Warcraft was made because they loved Dungeons and Dragons so much, and they wanted to make a world of Dungeons and Dragons. And then it kind of went full circle when 4E kind of copied them, which is kind of funny, but that's another story. You have music. Rush. Okay? Rush has said their lyrics literally come from Dungeons and Dragons, as there's probably 20 other bands I don't even know of, but I know that they literally took their lyrics from Def Leppard and Dungeons and Dragons because that's how much they love D&D. Yep. You have everything. Let's see, television, anything fantasy related in television. I just saw yet something else. Next week's Rick and Morty. They show a preview where Summer gets a wristband where she can put it on her arm, and then she can change her attributes from strength, dexterity, intelligence, charisma, and she's changing them on the fly. And I'm like, that's from D&D. Like, it's like you don't even think about it. It's like air. It's just become part of our lives and our culture.
Right. Which I think makes the point that D&D is so much more than the company that currently owns it today.
Yes.
Because
yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
It's huge.
It is huge, but the problem is that the people who currently shepherd Dungeons and Dragons seem to have, and I don't mean the creators, I mean the C-level.
You mean the executives who
C-tier
make the top-level
management.
decision.
They seem to have no love for the game. They don't know how to play it seems. They don't seem to know how it even works. To them,
we were told they refused to even try when they were offered to.
When they were offered to at the D&D Summit, Bob Worldbuilder and other influencers asked them if they wanted to play, and they said, no, thank you. They didn't want to learn.
Well,
and it's like, okay, the people that are literally in charge of the future of Dungeons and Dragons and where it's going to be in the next 50 years see it as nothing more than an IP and something they can make money off of, and don't seem to care about the cultural impact and the future of D&D in our world and our life. And just to show how much this influences people and their identities, look at what happened with the OGL. When the OGL happened, I was physically sick to my stomach and angry, if you couldn't tell, from the endless videos that we were doing and how much like I was trying to protect D&D and not get sued. But so were other
you were
people.
in different stages of grief.
Yes.
I could tell when I first got the leak, and we started with different things like denial. I was like, is that really true? And a lot of people were, and it went through all of the different things. There was bargaining. It's like, come on, could you change this thing about the OGL? There's anger, like. Because that's what it is. It's a part of yourself. Yes. It's a part of your identity.
It's a part of yourself. And let's just say D&D goes away, Derik. Let's just say it does. Say something happens.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
Yeah.
Think of like your favorite restaurant, okay?
Sure.
How many times does that happen where you have your favorite restaurant closed?
It happens all the time.
And it is devastating. Okay?
And I find, you know what? And I find another one. And I move on. I mean, companies don't last forever. Games don't last forever, because I think what we're missing here is an important point. Yes, we all grew up with D&D. Yes, we all have these extreme memories. But what D&D started, this tabletop role-playing game community, this hobby, this lifestyle, that is well and alive and thriving. Well, all right, you don't have to go much further than Chaosium or Paizo or go to itch.io or whatever to see that there is that process of Dungeons and Dragons has gone and grown way beyond the boundaries of any corporate master. And so, yeah, like you could criticize Wizards of the Coast, the company, for making bad business decisions, or arguably making good business decisions if it's helping their bottom line, depending on how you want to do it. But I don't feel like they deserve all the criticism that they get, because, quite frankly, their priorities are the priority. I mean, if you're going to criticize Wizards of the Coast for that, then you need to criticize every corporation ever. Do you think Apple's goal is to make the very best phone? Sure, they want to make a good phone, but they really want to sell phones. Right?
Yes, but you see, Apple's an interesting one.
Critique the shit out of corporations. That's totally fair. But corporations are not our friend. They have never been your friend.
Correct.
They will never be your friend. So to suddenly act like Wizards of the Coast because they have D&D, which we all love, means that they need to be Mr. Corporate Good Guy. I don't buy it.
Well,
so you guys have taken the two opposite sides on this, and as I sometimes do, I think I'm going to take a middle stance on this, as kind of as always, because I don't feel as strongly as Steven on the amount that he's criticized, and I think that's pretty clear in all of these videos that I'm not quite as strong as he is in terms of criticizing them. But I also don't feel like it's fair to say that Steven is just universally critical of anything just for being D&D or WoTC Decision. Yeah. I do want to point out that while Steven was initially like skeptical before he had seen it of what might happen in the Dungeons and Dragons movie because the OGL was happening at the time, he was perhaps gave one of the most positive reviews of it of anybody I know who's like deep in the industry. I'm not saying other people didn't like it too, but he was really positive about it.
I love it.
Right. I mean, coming from someone who, in my personal opinion, thinks that I'm very critical of things, but frequently gets pegged as being very negative about things. I will say this. I don't think at any point, Stephen, that you ever were being unfair in your criticizing of them, because you were making valid points against things that they did and pointing out why you thought they were scummy or why they were bad ideas, either for the player group or for the business itself. So I think that specific comment that kind of kicked off this whole thing, it was not necessarily appropriate, because yes. And you are a big fan. I mean, you just showed all the 5e books you had, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're clearly a supporter of the game. You just, number one, want to see the company do better. But number two, like we said, is there's this idea of how much responsibility does Wizards of the Coast have to be good stewards of our childhood memories? And I don't know that is part of the corporate charter.
I think the comment about Steven was not necessarily inappropriate. Given it's always appropriate to say that you hear too much negativity. I honestly wish that we could do more shows that were about fun, like learning about GMing topics and exploring other games, and have lots and lots of people want to watch.
None of you want to watch those.
But everyone who is watching this true. Right now, and I've heard people talk to us, even people who are like big, sometimes other big YouTubers with big audiences who are like, we come to Roll for Combat though, just to make sure we catch up with the newest news, like the latest things that have happened, because we know that Roll for Combat has a finger on that pulse. So like, I understand that we have a finger on the pulse of things that happen, and that the modern day and the modern era has a lot of negative things that are happening. I'd love to do GM tips and other more fun topics too.
Yeah. I mean, again, to solve this point home, the problem for the people who think that maybe it's critical or too negative is you, because during the OGL debacle, right, where Steven was covering all the news with his insiders and bringing lawyers on, you had a host of other content creators who were making their own, but they're just basically rehashing information that they got from somewhere else. And I was making videos about GMing and tips and advice and how to build dungeons and what's a good way to build monsters. And guess what? Everybody else's subscribers doubled or tripled or quadrupled in just a few months. Yeah. You guys went from like way less than me to way more than, like, an order of magnitude more than me. And guess what? I didn't get those views. I didn't get those subscribers because, you know what? Nobody was clicking on my videos, which I'm fine with because that's just who I am. But I'm just trying to say is that people don't care about learning how to be a better dungeon master, and people don't care about learning how to write an adventure or create a cool monster. You think you do, you say you do, but you don't. You click on WoTC's evil and we should bring them all down. That's what you guys click on. That's what everybody.
And also, quite frankly, I have an experience and background in business. So, you know what? There are hundreds of videos telling you how to build the best ranger possible, like what spells to take at level 7 for your wizard. But there's not a lot of people out there who can tell you how to run a company that publishes Pathfinder and 5e and has the industry experience that I do. So that's why we do what we do. And
because you're not only in it, you have had the experience being up close and personal with Blizzard people, with Marvel people when they were doing badly that time. Like, you have all these firsthand experiences with companies that could be seen to be incomparable positions in geek culture that few other people do. So it's something special and different that we have. And between that expertise and what people are interested in seeing and what people trust us to provide, I think it's only natural that we've wound up having more topics that are in that venue of the most recent news about TTRPGs or WoTC, and moving away from the GM tips that was kind of our early Roll for Combat Live content, were all GM tips and things like that.
And quite frankly, Professor Dungeon Master gave us the highest compliment I think you can have. He called us the 60 Minutes of role-playing games.
Yeah, there's definitely, you guys have kind of carved out that niche, right? Where it seems like you always have the most up-to-date information, the breaking news, between your contacts throughout the industries and just, the fact that, unlike a lot of us, I'm including myself in this, me and so many people out there, we're posers. You know what I mean? Like, we're not really industry insiders. I think a lot of people have gotten kind of I don't think they should be grouped in as being an industry insider just because they're a content creator with a lot of subs. That doesn't make you an industry insider.
Right.
You all are legitimately, and so even if it can be maybe hyperbolic at times and a little bit like, oh, sensational. The fact of the matter is, you're still bringing forth this information, and I think. Does Wizard deserve all the criticism they get? No. Is it good that you are critiquing them? And is it good that you're bringing this to people's attention? Yes. I think that is a extremely valuable service. Do I think that Wizards of the Coast is the worst company ever? No, but I don't think any company is good. So there's that.
They're definitely not the worst company ever. Right. Especially since there are so many people who aren't at the top executive levels who do really love the game. And there's some companies where a lot of the people in the company from the top down are kind of cynical about what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. And don't forget, Mark did co-write Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which doesn't hurt either.
Right. But you would think that would mean that if I talk deeply about Pathfinder 2nd Edition, that would be a popular topic, right? But
you would think, but it's not.
I have an entire channel on YouTube and Twitch called Arcane Mark, and it has like
100th the views.
It has 1,000 followers on Twitch now. It just recently got that.
Pretty good.
That's big stuff. Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Apparently, that's high for Twitch. 1,000 followers and having 10 people who watch it because.
Yeah.
Like basically the top 10th of a percent have like all of the viewers on
the
Twitch,
average number of followers on Twitch is 3. So you're actually doing very well.
Yeah.
Right. That is the sad truth, right? You go to Twitch and you're like, all you have to do is scroll down one page and then there's 100 people that are all 0 or 1 viewers. And
yes.
But the other thing is, if you watch 60 minutes,
your point is right, Mark.
If you're watching 60 minutes, they're not doing fluff pieces very often, they're being critical and they're taking a hard eye, I think is the term, a hard look at a topic. And we take hard looks at, there's not a lot of companies to take hard looks at. I mean, trust me, we might be doing a hard look at Paizo in a little while. I mean, they did the remaster, but once the orc and other things start to sort out, I'm going to take a re-look at that. I'm not ready to talk about that topic just yet, but everyone is up for grabs. Trust me.
I think that's, there's very clear that some companies do things that are much more in good faith than others. No company is your friend. Some of the people in them might. What Paizo has done is clearly much more in good faith than some of the things with like the OGL pulling like Paizo, I would say as a company is way more focused on gaming. Such a high percentage even of the top executives are gamers. That having been said, I think that Steven has a good point. I guess it's similar to, Jonathan Swift in Gulliver's Travels. His point with the Lilliputians and the Brobdingnagians is the Lilliputians are so small and you can't see them and they just look like beautiful dolls. And the Brobdingnagians are these giants. They always look to Gulliver like they were grotesque because he could see all of their flaws magnified. And they really were the same. It was just your perspective. If you put a magnifying glass down on any company, even the most friendly company, the one that is the best one where you like every person in the company, there's going to be fractures or weird things that are going on. And so just by being the 500-pound gorilla in the room and getting that magnifying glass, WoTC is also getting scrutiny. Right. But, some of our other things weren't about WoTC. We did one that was about the lawsuit with Netflix, for example. But
yeah, I think the other thing that we have to consider here, right, is, every day throughout, America, this is going back a while ago, but like every day there are, parks that are being repurposed and, cities are selling them off so that they can sell the real estate to some property developer or whatever like that. Right. But you don't care. But then when it's your park, the one that you grew up in, the one that you took your kids to, now suddenly you have this personal connection to it. The fact of the matter is, number one, because they're a public company, but number two, yes, there are people out there who obviously adore Call of Cthulhu and people out there who adore Blades in the Dark. But like, if John Harper was doing something shitty to Blades in the Dark, like the amount of people who have a personal stake in that game is just so small. None of these games have been with us long enough to really affect us. And yes, Chaosium Call of Cthulhu has been around for a long time, but that is a small percentage compared to D&D. D&D has that grip on people. And so when D&D does something, it feels like a personal attack because it feels like they're coming after your livelihood. They feel like they're coming after your sense of self. And I think that's why people, I think, overreact.
Oh, I don't think I overreact. Wow. During the OGL, I saw people, the closest analogy I could see was almost like a religious war, because this was something that was such a deeply integrated part of themselves. So much so that when they actually saw the existential threat of it being taken away from them, that it wasn't even something they comprehended was possible. And when they saw it happen, I don't know if you saw how, was it the free D&D, website, what, they got 77,000 signatures in like a week, and then they just turned it off because it was getting out of control. Do you know how hard it is to get that many signatures on anything? I mean, it was out of control, the OGL scandal. And I think that woke up a lot of people and realized, because I was saying it for a long time, as were a few other people that are industry insiders, that WoTC is not your friend. And before the OGL, you can see, and those videos are still up there, of how much they loved WoTC and they love D&D and they love us and they're our friends and they will do no wrong and they are going to make sure the game is as perfect as possible. And then all of a sudden, they woke up to the fact that, wow, none of that is true.
Well, I think
At
that
all.
one thing that is a smart PR move that companies sometimes do that helps with that is if they put their employees, their workers who do love the game forward as the main connection point with fans, then it
Right.
can give the fans the idea that the company loves the game. But the reality is, like Derik said multiple times today and many times throughout multiple shows, companies are not your friend. Companies are not a person, much as Citizens United might say otherwise. They can't love a game because they are a company and they exist to make money and to grow. Even though individual people, maybe everyone in the company individually does love the game in certain companies. And so I think what happened was that it wasn't that it was completely dishonesty and lies, but that it was just that WoTC had a smart policy of putting in people who did love the game, who were passionate, who were great designers and editors and people who worked on the game to talk to fans, to run games, and to be the front and the face of it. And basically was a pay no attention to the man behind the curtains about the executive so that no one was watching that hand moving. And people started doing that more so after the OGL thing because it was what they did was so egregious at that point.
No, I think you're right. Obviously, I think that criticism, though, it comes from this idea. I think ultimately, right, it comes from a sense of fear. I think it comes from a sense of fear of loss. And I think part of the thing is, I think there, and this is, I think, where there's this weird. My perception and my view of it is maybe very different than the rest of the industry because, and I mean this as a industry, as people who create products for D&D, third-party creators, and people who play D&D, which is this. They view D&D as sort of almost in a weird way having a monopoly, right? And because in their minds, in my mind, there is no monopoly. I can go play whatever role playing game I want. There's hundreds of them on the shelf behind me, and I don't view it as one big thing. For example, I grew up playing second edition, loved it. Basic was my first introduction. Then first and second edition in the early 90s, second edition in the late 90s. Third edition obviously was my jam. Fourth edition, loved it. And then when I was playing Pathfinder and fifth edition came out, and I said, not for me. I bought a couple books here and there over the year. Do I have every fifth edition book on my shelf? No, but I bought some books, but by and large, it wasn't my edition. Miss me with it. That's fine. I'll go play one of these other 10,000 games that I have on my shelf. But I think for a lot of people, they're like, if they take away D&D, I can't role play anymore. I can't play these games with my friends. I don't have, that's my only option. And I understand that the reality is for some people, maybe that is their world. And maybe they're a publisher and you say, yeah, I could go make Call of Cthulhu supplements, but I'm never going to be able to support myself on that as I can producing, 5e videos or 5e content or 5e PDFs. So I get that could be like a really scary thing. But at the end of the day, I just don't view it as this much of this walled garden as some people view it as, because the fact of the matter is there are a lot of other games out there that you could go and play. And if you're not happy with the company or you're not happy with the game, go pick a different one. You're not.
It's not so easy for some people to find.
It's not that easy.
I know, but I also don't know. Like it is actually though, but like
it's not. I mean, you think it is because you are surrounded.
I know. I'm
by
biased.
Friends that are very open to playing other games. I have a group of friends who I've been playing games with most of my adult life, and the second I asked them if let's try DCC, and they say no. I'll try anything.
Which is still fairly close to
exactly.
And they still said no.
And they still
right?
said no.
How likely is he going to be able to get them to play something that's farther away?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've tried them to play other game systems, and they just don't want to.
Find a new group.
Yeah, but I don't want to. I like them. These are my friends. I want to play with my friends.
And that reasoning is why Wizards of the Coast can get away with what they get away with, because I don't want to.
Right. And you're right. And that's why, exactly. And that because it's very hard. Look, it's very, very hard to change behaviors. And it's like, and that's why they're doing what they're doing, is they're trying to make IPs and worlds and behaviors and own as much of it they can. I'll give you an example. Professor Dungeon Master just put out a video a few weeks ago, basically saying, looking if D&D was a monopoly. And he wrote me and he said, Steve, what do you think? I've been talking to people, and some of them say D&D is a monopoly, and some of them say D&D is not a monopoly. What's your opinion? And I wrote him and said, the question is incorrect. It's that Dungeons and Dragons is not a monopoly, but they want to become one. And that is the crux of why I keep holding their feet to the fire. Because if they had it their way, they would put everyone else out of business. They would own everything. They would have implemented the OGL, which would have killed the entire 5e marketplace and then some. It could have even killed Pathfinder. They tried to do it.
They wouldn't own the books behind me, though, Steven.
Yeah, but
you know what?
Yeah,
I actually, and it goes with what Derik said a little. I disagree with both you and Professor DM's question on that one, Steven. But
Okay.
I think that by breaking the paradigm, you're closer.
Right.
I think that not only are WoTC not a monopoly, I don't think that they want to be. I think they want to consider themselves to so much not even be in the same realm or plane of existence as the other TTRPGs.
100%
that they
right.
couldn't even be a monopoly because those aren't even our competitors. Those books behind Derik are some other completely different and lesser form of existence. And we are perhaps a monopoly of Dungeons and Dragons, but we're not a monopoly when you compare to World of Warcraft and our real competitors. I've definitely heard that from people who would know that the executives at WoTC want to consider their competitors to be like Blizzard or other things like that, not
you're right.
Paizo or Chaosium.
You're absolutely correct.
No, you're absolutely correct. But they wanted to be, and they didn't get away with it, so now they do have to shift. And this was only, I believe, one of many plans. It's like, okay, fine, we will become our own thing, and that's what bothers me. That's the next thing that bothers me. It's because they're going to try to turn D&D, because D&D is as big as it's ever going to be. Okay. I wish I can give you this. I can't. I have a whole bunch of insider information I just got recently that I can't share with anyone. But very long story short is that a week or two ago I was saying how D&D is on the decline. It hasn't been selling as well. All been confirmed, not only through the public but through private channels. It's very easy to see. It's a lot of factors. First, COVID ended. Second, manga has been taking over bookstores. Third, is there release a new edition. I don't care how much they try to say it's still 5th edition. Whenever you release a new edition, the previous edition always falters.
The fact of the matter is that the release of the
because
edition,
remaster just came out, and
the release of a edition or a remaster type thing making the current sales lower doesn't prove that the future will be lower, though.
No,
because it always dips and it could go back up. We don't know.
My point is, I don't think they want it to be 5 times big. Sorry, they want it to grow. Yeah, they want it to grow double in 5 years. So if
that could be tough, given how big they grew before that.
It's impossible. They never grow. I've looked at the numbers. It is never going to happen. It's literally there's not.
Can you say never?
Never.
You know the numbers better.
Unless they go online and they get a complete,
but they are going online.
Which is now it will because but they're transforming D&D into something it's not.
What do you think? I'm curious. What do you think the percentage of people who are playing Baldur's Gate 3 who have never played what we would call a tabletop RPG? Percent-wise.
Oh, wait, what percentage of people who are playing
Baldur's
D&D?
Gate 3 players who have never played a tabletop RPG?
Very high.
80%, 90%?
Like 70.
Okay, so 70% of all the people playing BG3 is a huge number, right? Because that's a lot of people playing BG3. If you could convert even 5%, 10% of that
they're
into people
they would convert 0.01 if they're lucky.
Okay.
How can you be so sure that it's 1 in 10,000?
Because a few reasons. One,
especially if your game now has, digital maps.
Oh, well, now, okay. Then that's 2 different questions. So convincing
that's doubling D&D in whatever 5 years.
If they make a version
then that's what they're doing.
But they're planning to do that in 5 years.
Oh, I know. Right. But my point is that how many people are going to convert right now, which is the hotness of Baldur's Gate 3 will fade. Okay, it's not going to be lasting much longer. Like it's gonna go through the cycle is. I'll tell you when it's going to end.
Some big DLC will come out.
No, I know when it's going to end because
they'll make a Game of the Year edition.
It's going to get Game of the Year. So the Game Awards I think are December 7th. That is sort of the peak, and the new cycle of new games is February. So February is when the new top games start coming out, and you will start seeing Baldur's Gate. It's never going to go away, but it's definitely going to fade because the new hotness is going to start coming out in February. That's when all the new AAA games start coming out. Right now, there's nothing until February, so you're going to hear a lot about Baldur's Gate, but it will start to fade, and by then, it's too late because they missed their window of opportunity. So this is the time, and they will try to convert those people to their new BTT. But I'm talking about 0.1% of the people who will play Baldur's Gate 3 will now try D&D. Not this, but you know what I meant. The actual TTRPG,
Yeah.
not.
I mean, I agree with you. It's low.
It's very
low.
low.
I just think that that the future state where there's a digital offering,
Yes,
will make that much higher.
Oh, it's going to. But do you really truly think that the digital offering of
Look,
Dungeons
Steve,
and Dragons is going to be anything like what we play today?
Steve, I already
No.
consider VTTs to be an abomination.
Well,
and so like,
this is oh yeah, well, Baldur's Gate, right.
Derik is enough of a Luddite on this.
Tiger Eyes is right.
Yes.
Baldur's Gate 3 is not a TTRPG; it's a CRPG. It's very different.
That's true.
But
well, in that case, I would argue that most people's tables aren't TTRPGs either.
wow, you are really.
I think that Baldur's Gate 3 is pretty different
close.
from
Pretty
a
close.
VTT.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that between the dialogue options and the character development, there's probably more character development and role playing done in a typical playthrough of BG3 than at your standard run of the mill
table. Times better.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, well, nobody ever said that CRPG doesn't have
CRPG
the words role playing in the
fantastic.
acronym. They just said that it's different than being a tabletop RPG.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I've watched your game, Steve, and I've seen you guys play.
Oh yeah, we're crazy.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's a bunch of people just hanging around having fun, and
Oh yeah. We're basically just friends ripping on each other through our characters and having fun, and and fighting. I mean, it's nothing more than an excuse. That's
Fighting the
thing.
monsters or fighting with you on game rulings?
Well, it used to be the fighting me. That hasn't happened in years.
That's great.
Back in the old days, that used to be. I told you we got into fist fights. That's how bad it was.
Right.
Now we're old men. We don't do that anymore.
You hired me so that I could just break your rules
That
arguments
actually
in your
worked
favor.
incredibly well. I'll be like, what do you think it is? I don't know. That's Mark. And then we find out, and there's no arguments.
We never got into fist fights, but there were screaming matches for sure back in
not only
the
did I
day.
get the fist fights and screaming matches, but my best friend and I didn't talk to each other for almost a year.
I remember one argument that literally it would end, and then it would be like a couple hours later, it would get brought up again, and it happened over the course of an entire week, which was basically do you look up, as a human being, when you enter a room, do you pay attention to the ceiling?
No.
And would
No
you
one
notice
does.
something right? And my argument was that no, you don't.
You
and
don't.
everyone was like, yes, because there was
you don't. No, you don't.
No,
It's been proven.
I think that it
actually.
depends on what game you're playing. In older versions of Dungeons and
Also
Dragons, the
depends if
answer
you-
is not unless you said you were looking up.
Well,
and in later versions,
Well,
you
no,
would
no, no.
roll. You would roll a check
If you're
to
an
see.
adventurer,
No, it was a
I'll
later
say
version.
Wait, if you're an adventurer, or I think of the
If
military.
it's a later version, you would get to roll a perception check to see if you were looking.
Right.
That's
but
true.
but the question then is, what does the perception check entail?
If you roll high enough to beat the DC, that meant that you saw the thing that was above, that was hiding up there. And if you didn't, even if you looked up a little, you didn't happen to notice it because it was well hidden.
Right, but that's where that was the crux of the debate, which is well, does a perception check, is it a radar system, or is it modeling normal human behavior and acuity? And so that was sort of the question. The idea was in this position, no one would ever see this creature unless they specifically looked at it. And it was well, but isn't that what a perception check is for? And that was the crux of the debate.
Well, yeah, it's a good
okay.
question. And I certainly would say that at the very least, the idea that you
I don't know that there's a right answer.
The idea that you might look up and look down all the time is considered to be common enough that some spells, the moving arcane eye that became prying eye, did have specific text that was if you are looking up and down, it moves at this speed. If you're not and you're just going forward, it moves at this speed. So it was clearly at least considered to be a common enough possibility that spell gave toggles.
So
for
by the
it.
way, I will use here. You want a game tip? Here's my game tip. We never give game tips. Here's a game tip: is that as the normal human, it actually has been proven you don't look up. Okay, it's a thing. But I would say adventurers are closer to tactical soldiers, and if you see when soldiers enter into a room and they do a scan of the room before they clear it, they look. There's a method of how to clear a room. If anyone's in chat is in the military, they know this. It's like you go across, you look at there's like different corners. You have to look at all these different places. So I would say that any adventurer, whenever I have a differentiation of the rules, I think about, okay, what would you do if you're
Multiple people in chat have confirmed you, Steven.
Oh yeah, no, I actually
right, and that is what I use. I say you're not a normal person. You're an adventurer. I think of like if I was in the army and I was clearing rooms, what would I do? Would I be looking up? Will I be scanning? Yes. Therefore, yes, you're going to find it.
And I would agree with you that clearing the room is a thing. But then the question was, how do you? Where is the responsibility of the player to do that? And how much of that is taken over by the perception check? Anyway, we're getting way off topic.
In that case, I'd say if you are saying you're actively looking, then you're looking throughout the room. Because I have that all the time. Because if you're in a relaxed position, it's like going hot. It's like, are you going hot or are you just hanging out? And my adventures will say, it's like, okay, we do, at this point, we have like, slang for everything, whether it's greyhawking or
you could be using the searching exploration.
Right, they're searching. It's like we scan the room, we do the standard, and I'm like, okay, we greyhawk, we look at everything, and I'm like, then that is shorthand for me saying that you are doing everything and looking at every inch, tapping on all the walls, looking for any hidden passages and monsters. So
I don't want to re-tangent us, so I'm going to bank this if we have time at the end. I do have but it's related to what we're just talking about. But I do have a Pathfinder question for Mark. So.
Derik has a Pathfinder question for me, but it's going to tangent us.
Yes, but I want to.
I think we've kind of given the greatest hits to the main topic, which is that Steven thinks, because I'm going to try to summarize it and summarize all of our positions fairly, and we'll see how I do. That Steven thinks because of the fact that D&D has huge cultural cachet and people's entire identity are somewhat tied up into how much they're into it. And the fact that this gives it a lot of scrutiny, it's bound to mean that WoTC also gets more criticism because people are paying attention to what they do and their decisions have a larger impact. Derik says all corporations are bad, and so it's weird that WoTC is getting singled out for what it does, because other corporations that are certainly much worse than even anything that WoTC has done. And I say something that's in the middle and that is not picking a side on this debate, where WoTC does deserve some of the criticism, maybe not as in-depth as Steven sometimes goes, but that I do see the fact that I don't think Steven is a 100% negative Nelly, and he does praise things when he thinks that they're great. Is that about right for our 3 points of view?
So.
Yeah. I guess I just feel like, Wizards of the Coast is not producing insulin or baby formula, or they don't have a monopoly on seed grains and, GMO derived seed products, right? They're making role-playing games, of which there are a lot of out there. And they do not have a monopoly on your childhood memories. Again, everything we talked about at the beginning of the show was from TSR, a different company. So I just feel like you could criticize them. I mean, that's fair. I mean, you're allowed to criticize any company. In fact, you should criticize the companies that you buy things from. That's fair. But like the vitriol, the hatred, this sense that they are somehow personally attacking you with their actions is crazy. If they ruin the game, if they shit on it, if they turn it into a video game, we'll play another one. I mean, that's
okay. I'm gonna say one last point to this, and see how many people in chat, because we got nearly 300 people, and see.
You got a poll.
I can do a poll. We actually have something that we can use as a cultural tangent, a cultural milestone or touchstone. That's the word I'm looking for.
Touchstone, I think.
Yes,
is right.
Touchstone is that Star Wars. Once was loved and beloved and could do no wrong. And then Disney bought them, and oh boy, have they messed that up.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that people thought they could do no wrong before Disney bought Star Wars?
It's not only they can do no wrong.
Are you kidding?
No, I am not kidding, because Star Wars, I'm talking about the original trilogy and even the expanded universe.
Well, hold on. Now you're moving the goalpost.
No, I'm not moving the goalpost.
You said they could do no wrong until Disney bought them, and now everyone's being upset about them. But there was a lot of stuff.
Prequels were
wrong.
I'm
talking about the prequels.
Unwatchable. Second and third, they have issues.
Attack of the Clones is so bad.
Compared
the prequels were pre-Disney. Now, I thought you were going to make a point about the original trilogy and then cut off after that, because I think that's a good parallel.
Okay, let me rephrase it. Right. Prequels only proved after Disney. It's like people thought it was bad until they saw how much worse it can get. And the point is that how many times have you seen and heard, and I follow Disney a lot, it's like Star Wars has destroyed my childhood. And can that happen to D&D? And my answer is yeah. I think it can. I think they could make D&D and turn into something that's so repugnant and gross and has nothing to do that you're embarrassed by it.
Is it going to be repugnant though? Like,
it could be. I never thought
I
it
don't
would
think
happen with
anything
Star
they've
Wars.
shown goes so far to that calling it repugnant would be fair. Like saying cynical cash grab for some of the ideas that you think that they might be doing, and that you have a good point that they very well might be doing, maybe, but repugnant is a very strong word, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, episode 9 is not only an affront to Star Wars, it's an affront to movies.
So no, but I mean, I'll give you
atrocious.
I'll give you another great example. Right, it's been in the press. I missed it the week it came out, and so I had to go like by myself. I usually go with my friends. I went and saw Endgame at like a Saturday morning showing, but it was still packed.
Okay,
but I was by myself.
Okay,
I was crying at the fan service, at the awesomeness, right? At the moment, at the callbacks, Easter egg after Easter egg after Easter egg, just fan service, fans in Spider-Man: No Way Home. When
that movie's so good.
And again, I understand like the movie has plot problems. Again, I could be critical. The movie has some plot problems, has some pacing problems, has some pacing issues. But the scene where the 3 Spider-Men, when he meets them and he starts to talk about the line that his now dead aunt tells him, with great power, and then Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield finish the line because they know, like, bawling my eyes out.
Dude, I was smiling so hard it broke my face.
But last week, I saw The Marvels, one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. Not the worst MCU movie, one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my whole life. And to be honest with you, Eternals, Thor 4, Doctor Strange 2.
You got to stop seeing these movies, buddy. That's what I do.
Wait.
Okay.
Exactly. We're not much better.
Okay.
But you know what? I'm still buying a ticket. Disney is still getting my money. So what sort of signal am I sending? And to your point, you stopped watching.
Oh, I stopped watching. Yeah, I did.
You stopped watching.
I haven't seen any of those movies.
You are doing the responsible consumer thing.
Some people in chat are also saying that Star Trek is the same way, and I don't agree. Because
I don't agree at all.
I think that Lower Decks is fantastic.
Lower Decks is amazing.
And I like Strange New World.
I have been out of Star. I'm a huge Star Trek fan, but I stopped when like the J.J. Abrams movie started coming out because it wasn't my thing. But people who are still in it basically say that Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks are like the best Trek has been since like the DS9, Voyager, TNG era.
Oh yeah.
So
I think that's true.
It's very good. But here's the thing: it's the Star Trek was smart enough that they had unique casts and they were siloed. It's called siloing. So you siloed each series into its own mini universe. And yes, there's crossover because Spock shows up in a few of them, and you have what's his name? Not Captain Pike is in it. So yes, they do a little bit of fan service, and heck, Lower Decks is literally nothing but fan service, but it's done with love and respect and fun and care. Therefore, it's fantastic. Yeah. That's the thing, is they did it the right way, is that they kept telling new stories with different crews in different parts of the world. If Star Wars did that, I think it would have been very successful, but they didn't want to do that. They said, no, let's keep telling the same story over and over and over again with the same characters and the same part of the freaking universe. How many times? Like, I'm sick of it. It's like, do it the way Star Trek does it. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I'm old enough to remember when that came out, because it was actually up against Babylon 5, which was superior in many ways.
Similar.
Yeah, similar, but they're both like, and if you remember, it's like, wow, they're not going to be in a starship. They're going to be on a space station.
So my uncle who I like taught me about Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
And we used to go over to my cousin's house. My cousin was like 10 years older than me. My uncle was like 25 years older than me. And we would go over to his house and we would watch Next Generation. And then when Deep Space Nine came out, I remember that my uncle and like my other, like my cousins, whatever, like they were all like, oh, this isn't Star Trek. How can they call it Star Trek? It's not even on a ship. They're not going anywhere.
Right. Oh, it was very controversial.
But you know what? And at the time, I was kind of like, yeah, DS9. But you know what? DS9 is the best Star Trek show of all time.
DS9? Is it the best Star Trek show of all time? It is one of the best science fiction shows, period. End of story. Period. End of sentence. It is unbelievably good. Phenomenally good.
There's a couple rough episodes in season 1.
But there's a couple of rough episodes. But overall, I remember even when it was coming out and we were watching it and the Dominion War was going on and we're talking about it week after week and we're like, there's just never a bad episode. Like even their bad episodes are fantastic. Like it was just incredible. Now
Cooperative Waffles, if we want to go like top TNG episodes versus top DS9 episodes, and I could see us getting, tit for tat there.
There's
right?
a lot more, but the overall average, your average DS9 episode, I would say, is in like the high 7s to 8s, all of them, because they were all there. Even their bad ones are really good. And Star Trek Next Generation's all over the place. Like they're consistently a little lower. Their highs are high, but their lows are really, for season 2, like when I watched it on BBC,
season 2 is rough.
They don't even show season 2. Like, they don't even bother. Like they repeat them. They just cut it out because no one wants to watch season 2, and they usually cut out season 1. They just go right to season 3.
That's not the worst thing.
3, go to 7. That's it.
Yeah, and but again, I mean, Deep Space Nine, right? I mean, like we always joke that when Cisco shaved his head, that's like the game. So when the show really got good, and they
when he got the beard and shaved. Oh, it's like when Riker got the beard. And which is gonna shave his head.
yeah. So, anyways, and honestly, too, to be fair to my uncle who passed away many years ago, but he was right in that Deep Space Nine did get a lot better once they added the Defiant.
Oh,
because it allowed them to go places.
It's because the show was not doing great in the ratings, and it was getting beaten by, I don't know, like Babylon 5 and others. And which, by the way, not doing great in the ratings. It was still getting like 25 million people or 30. It was getting insane ratings, by the way, which today would have been like the top 10 shows on all of television. But back then it was still in like the 70s or 90s because television was very different back then. So they literally brought Worf in to shake things up. And I remember like thinking, oh my God, what a hokey thing, they're bringing in Worf. And oh my God, thank God they brought him in, because the show was 1,000 times better once they brought him in. He is the best character arc of all time. I mean, he almost became the freaking chancellor of the Klingon Empire, and he turned it down. I mean, oh, God, he's so good.
Worf's a great character.
Worf is the best.
So, Derek, I think it's safe to say that you wouldn't have been pulling us too much more into a tangent if you asked a Pathfinder question.
Well, it's very rare. It's not a Derek episode if we don't start talking about Star Trek.
That's true.
I can at least talk about Star Trek, so I'm happy to do so.
But my point is, I think what the point is...
Chad actually started it this time.
But like, maybe the current Marvel movies that are being produced by Disney aren't great. And maybe the Disney Star Wars films aren't great, but you know what? That doesn't mean that the ones that we grew up with are bad. And you know what? What's his name? Zack Snyder is making his Rebel Moon, which was his
very
failed.
interested in seeing that.
We had our whole episode about the RPG.
Whole episode about Rebel Moon.
Right. And maybe that'll be amazing. Maybe that will, maybe we need to stop worrying about these IPs that we grew up with. And I don't know, find a fucking new one.
Yeah, but the problem is that the Hollywood's not letting us.
Well,
they're not
because
letting us.
because people like me keep buying tickets for bad movies.
So stop doing it, Derik. It's all your fault.
I'm trying.
He's doing his best.
Why did you buy a ticket to see the Marvels?
Because
what is wrong with you?
And I'll say it the same way to a lot of those people out there who do, like, who have the similar issue, where it's like, because I have two friends, we've seen the Marvel movies together for a long time. Now they're married, they have kids. I never see them. The one time that we get together is when we go to see the Marvel movie. The Friday it comes out, we go the morning show, the first show. It's like we get like a bunch of old men. We get breakfast at like, yours truly or like Bob Evans, and then we go over and watch the movie at like 10:30 in the morning, right? So anyways, my point is it is a ritual for us. But at a certain point, even this most recent time when the text came in, hey, do you guys want to do this? He's like, basically it was like, you guys just want to get breakfast instead. Like, it was like literally discussed because we're like,
there's other movies, by the way. You don't have to see that one.
Right. We're like, just, moving on because like it's not good. And these corporations are going to keep shoveling this shit down your throat as long as you continue to buy and swallow it. So
Chad has been on fire, by the way, because don't worry, Tasha, I'm fully functional.
Yeah, that was the Naked Now. That was the name of that episode.
That's a
Naked
infamous one. Wow, Chat's on fire here. By the way, Invincible. I am watching season 1. I'm rewatching season 1. Season 2's been fantastic because it's been so long. I haven't seen it. If you've not seen Invincible, either of you.
I've seen season 1, but I didn't know that season 2 started.
Yep, it's up to episode 3, I think.
Then I will look into it.
And KMK in chat makes an interesting point. He's talking about music and people complaining about how there's no good music, and it's like, it is out there. You just you got to go find it yourself. And I think that's what it really comes about to. Is as a consumer of anything, you have to be a more active, dare I say, conscientious, dare I say, involved consumer. There was a time when, I marketing and advertising were never good things, obviously. Like they were never like trying to help you out. But there was a time and a place where, to a certain extent, like advertisements weren't as predatory. Marketing wasn't this like completely predatory field where it was all about like maximizing your innate psychology. It was more like, hey, we want to make you aware of the product. And you could more or less, as a consumer, trust that if Wizard of the Coast was coming out with a new book or whatever, it was going to be a good book and you were going to enjoy it. Well, maybe that's changed now. Maybe we have to be more, conscientious consumers, and we have to be more willing to sort of do the legwork ourselves and find those opportunities and find those hidden gems.
Let me tell you, I know this for a fact. I started in the 90s in advertising, and a lot of what we were doing was guessing. Okay, we had some ideas of what would work and what wouldn't work, and we had a couple of, but it was a lot of guess. It was a lot of guesswork. Okay, it just was. But today, because I'm still doing advertising, let me tell you, there's not that much guesswork. They have figured it out through pure brute force, AI learning, and they have so much stats and so much statistics, and they know exactly what works. They know exactly what words to put in an advertisement. They know what size of a picture of a person and where to put an advertising. They know everything, and that is why it works so well.
Right. And the fact of the matter is, there are two ways that they could spend money to get you to buy their product. One would be to make an amazing product. The other way would be to make an amazing marketing campaign. And I'm willing to bet that we can all know which one of those two is cheaper. And we'll probably
which one is more effective.
Which is going to work.
You can make an amazing product and get buried and nobody even sees you.
Yeah, that happens. That happens not only all the time, it is expected. It is expected that you can have the best product of all time. It's happened so frequently that you can't expect that to ever work anymore. In the old days you could, but not anymore. And it's just and a lot of it has to do with the internet and the level playing field. Is that since everyone has access to everyone, it's sort of like the Invincibles. When everyone is super, no one is. Well, guess what?
The Incredibles?
The Incredibles, sorry. It's that everyone has the same access to the same people.
Right. But I will counter to that by saying, again, is this going to be something that you're going to see on Polygon or Dice Tower? No. But I can tell you that right now, you can, to that point about the democratization, you can go to itch.io, or you can go to,
you're right.
You can go to, whatever it's, Roll for Combat. I'm trying to remember the address. YOL.rollforcombat.com, and you could kickstart a small independent product that you guys, I'm sure, aren't on some media blitz campaign, and you're not putting out like this incredible player demographic driven marketing campaign. No, you're trying to make great books and produce them the best way that you know how, and your customers have to find you. And ideally, they, you increase your exposure so they have an opportunity to. But if you go to itch.io right now, you could go through these games, and guess what? There's a lot of games there. Some of them, you don't know it, but one of those games on there might be your favorite game that you will ever play in your entire life. And you won't know because you never go and find it. Because it's not going to find you. So that's where, I said, there's certainly a amount that the customer has to do.
Yeah, there's so many games out there. There are literally so many games on itch.io that I have purchased like charity bundles on there that come with hundreds of games, and then I needed to go to separate websites that were guides to that charity bundle, where someone went through and tried to explain what was in it in a way that was like easier to understand, because my ability, even as a game designer who really gets into games, to comprehend the sheer volume of what I now had was like deterred by the amount that it was. Like I couldn't grok on to how much it was without going on to an online guide and being like, okay, so we have this many of this kind, and here are some standout titles that made it easier to understand it.
Actually, did have a interesting. Someone had, what did they say here? Oh, wow, this is going very fast. Let's see. I have not a super chat, a regular chat. I can't find it. I lost it. There it is. Is that that computer games have higher advertisement budgets than they have on the game itself? Yeah, that's very common. Movies too. It's like their advertising budgets will be higher than the actual game.
You'll say like, the movie made $500 million on a $300 million budget, and you're like, wow, they must have made money.
They have to make 2.5 times. They
lost so much money because they spent $500 million just on the advertising.
Right, and that's the thing. It's that how it works nowadays, because in the old days, if you wanted to do advertising, it was very gatekeepy. Okay, there was only a couple places you can go. You go to advertising agencies, and you can be on radio, you could be on TV, and you could be in print, and that was basically it. And there was no other way to get advertised for that. So your advertisement was pretty much regulated to just a few areas. I remember as a kid that they started to put advertising in front of movies. And let me tell you, the backlash was amazing. And they stopped because people hated it so much. Can you imagine what that was like? Advertisements before movies. How dare you? How dare you? Nowadays, you go to an amusement park. When you're waiting on the line, there's advertisements. There's advertisements on queue lines to go into an amusement park. Of course there's advertising when you go to see a movie. There's advertising everywhere now. Everywhere. And now the playing field has been leveled to points that you have to spend so much and hit everywhere that it's just so expensive, which is why I was talking to my wife, and we were in the city, and we went somewhere to eat that we normally go to. And I was saying, and we saw a restaurant. I was like, oh, what, do you know anything about that restaurant? Because my wife's really big in the food and restaurants. And she says, no, I don't know anything about it. I was like, well, why? I thought you were really into that. It goes, well, because we pretty much go into Manhattan and then we just go to the same 10 places. Like, we just never try anything new. And I think about that. It's like, I want to try something new. But when push comes to shove, you probably won't, which is where it comes back to D&D. And it's like, when push comes to shove, are you going to try the new role-playing system? Are you going to try the new system that requires custom dice? That, yes, it's based on Adventure Time. It's your favorite RPG or your favorite cartoon of all time. Probably not. You're probably going to go with what you know and what is comfortable, and it's just too much work. It's the same thing. It's like, how many times do you go to the same restaurants? How many times? I remember I lived across the street in Manhattan from like this restaurant where like all these restaurants, people are like, oh, have you been to any of these places? No. I'm like, they're literally across the street. I'm like, no, I've never been to any of them. Yeah. They're literally across the street. I don't go to any of them.
Man, people stick.
I go to what I like.
There's I did one of my favorite game design talks of all times is Mark Rosewater, Morrow, who did 20 lessons, 20 years talk at a game developer conference. And one of his lessons is, or I don't think it's exactly the lesson, but he's talking about, the grocery store thing, right? Like there's all the products, and he goes, what brand do people buy? And it says the brand that they're most familiar with, right? Because if it's a bias, if I know about it, it must be good. And if I don't know about it, or I don't go there, it must not be good. And so we're just biased to basically choose the games, choose the restaurants, choose the movies, that we're familiar with, because we naturally associate with that with being better, even though evidence sometimes comes up to the contrary, and we don't necessarily have it.
Well, that's also like any diet is. So diet food is branded with a green. So whenever you see something green, that usually means it's diet. I forgot, there's different colors for different types of food now. I mean, it's crazy. Advertising will break your brain. And the worst part about it is it works. There is a caveat, is that people do get numb to it, and then they do have, like anything, it's like, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you start getting burned by seeing the Marvels or Ant-Man 3 or any of these other crappy movies you keep seeing, Derik, maybe you'll actually break that behavior and start something new. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel, is that people will eventually break the behavior once they start getting disappointed. And that's what I worry about, is that if D&D keeps disappointing people, is that you think they're going to say, oh, I'm not going to play D&D, I'll go play something else.
Or they'll just keep playing the D&D that they already have.
Or they won't play anything.
And you know what?
Oh, we got a super chat. Lord of the Unfinished Project, $5. Do you think it's possible to unbrand D&D? People use it as a catch-all for TTRPGs. You hear people even saying for Call of Cthulhu, etc. No, it is impossible.
Okay, wait. I'm going to disagree in a slight way. I grew up playing D&D, 100%, and I don't remember exactly which game it was. Certainly Pathfinder 1, but even before Pathfinder 1. I remember being, I think it was GURPS, actually. I remember being very, I refused to use the term GM because I was like, I'm not a GM, I'm a DM. DM is the only thing that means the person who runs the game.
Right.
And now I'm the opposite. Even when I'm playing D&D, I'll be like, oh, I'm going to go GM that D&D game. So that terminology switch did happen. It just takes a lot of exposure.
Lot.
Yeah, but it's a lot. It does take a lot.
It takes a lot. Here's a good example.
Do I think it's possible? Yes.
Here's a good example. In the United States, okay, this thing that I'm drinking, you see this Diet Coke, this thing, what do you call this, Derik?
Soda.
What do you call this, Mark?
Also soda.
Correct. So we call it soda.
There's pop. Some people just call the entire thing Coke.
Correct.
Whether it's Sprite or 7-Up or anything else.
In the South, they just call it Coke. Whether it's 7-Up, whether it's Pepsi, but it doesn't matter. That it's called Coke.
Yeah.
That's the term. I call it soda because I'm from New York, and that's the term in New York. When I went to school in Pittsburgh, everyone called it pop.
Right. To be fair, Ohio
call it pop, by the way.
Pop too. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I call it soda. I don't know. I just do. But yes.
Yeah.
All right. Before we go,
Yes.
Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. The Pathfinder question. Yes.
Pathfinder 2 clarity or understanding. All right. So first I'm going to start with something, which is to say, and this is an assumption that I'm making, but it does not predicate the question. In other words, I'm just letting you know where my base assumption is. When people used to play Pathfinder 1 or D&D, these were fundamentally, in a certain sense, dungeon exploration games. And there was usually a pattern of behavior that people would do, right? The classic, oh, okay, well, you're going down the hallway. Well, I search for traps. All right, well, you get to the door. I'm searching for traps. I'm also going to see if it's locked, and I'm going to do that, right? And people would always get into these habits. And most tables develop the sort of lingua franca, the sort of a shorthand to say, I get it. You know, you're searching for traps. You're checking the door before we open it. You're listening at it. You're doing all the things that you do. But the game did not expressly define that. And similarly, you know, you would have the character who would say, you know, hey, I want to go scout ahead. And usually that involved like a rogue or a stealthy character literally going and scouting ahead and like making a stealth check and going down a hallway and maybe trying to creep into a room and look around and see what monsters were there or if there was anything there, and then have to come back. And that play pattern, the other one was kind of annoying, but the other play pattern was potentially problematic because as you know, games developed and designed, we said, look, we don't want to keep interrupting our game with this mini game of one player. It's taking up maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes of the game time.
It's the Dekker problem.
Right, where everybody else is just sitting in the background and doing nothing, and the rogue is off having his cool little rogue Metal Gear Solid scout mission. All right, so enter Pathfinder 2. Now, Pathfinder 2 introduces us to this idea of the exploration phase, and in particular, the exploration action. Now, the game is, I think people overuse this, but the game is very distinct. It says your players should describe to you in a naturalistic language what it is that they want your characters to do. But here is a way to map those concepts into mechanical terms. Defend, avoid notice, search, investigate, scout. Scout gives everyone a +1 into bonus to initiative because ostensibly your character is scouting. However, and this was where this was kind of surprising to some of us, there is a passage, and I'm not sure if it's in the core rulebook or the GMG, where it basically describes exploration action. And then it gives an example of where, you know, essentially what's true in the mechanics is true in the narrative as well. They're like, for example, a character may say, describe themselves as taking the scouting action. And then as everybody's getting ready to play, you describe how they have fallen through thin ice, far away from the party, potentially out of range of their help. And this like threw a bunch of people in the Knights of Last Call Discord for a loop because in their minds, scouting was sort of like, I guess I'm just looking around. What they didn't think or realize was that, at least according to this one throwaway passage, that there was this idea that the scouting was actually a pseudo quantum representation of that entire rogue scout mission that I used to describe, boiled down into +1 to initiative. So I'm curious, Mark, what are your thoughts on the scouting exploration action?
So with the scouting exploration action, the character is giving you a +1 to initiative because they're like vaguely scouting around, and that may call for some checks that are being made in the same way that someone who's searching may call for some checks in a different way, or someone who's investigating. So I definitely think it would make no sense for the GM to just declare that the scout fell into thin ice and is trapped underwater forever without rolling it out or something like that, right? But in the same way that if you're investigating, you might have a check to see if you found, if you discovered a hidden passage written in the hieroglyphics, or even if your mind could withstand the secretly sinister like passage written into the hieroglyphics that was meant to dominate you subtly or something like that. And in the same way that if you're searching, you might roll to see if you found a hidden object, or hey, maybe you saw the Medusa that was hiding behind that curtain because you were searching there and other people didn't see her yet. If you are scouting, maybe the GM would roll to see certain things that could happen while you're scouting if they feel like it.
I agree with all that, but I think the core disconnect for a lot of people, because to me, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But a lot of people, it's funny, we were talking about looking up and looking down. They were like, so many people were like, I viewed searching as sort of like looking down, at the floor, to make sure there's no traps. And they're like, I sort of looked at scouting as like looking up and just like, I don't know, keeping your eyes peeled. And like the idea that I think messed with people was the idea that like everything you said is 100% accurate. But when you're investigating, the idea is like, you're still with the group, and when you're searching, that you're still with the group. But this passage gave this implication that the scouting character is legitimately like leaving the group behind. And I guess coming back at some quantum period in order to give them a +1 bonus to initiative, because presumably they saw what they were going to fight, but they don't actually know what the thing is because they didn't actually scout. They just scouted. Does that make sense? Like
they look for signs of sounds or something coming.
Right. Which would be fine, but that's why that passage was so weird, because that implies that they are actually going out and doing their own thing on their own, where they could, fall into a trap away from the party, or fall through thin ice, or presumably even be attacked or ambushed by monsters while they are maybe 100 feet, 200 feet away from the party because they're out there scouting. And I guess
it doesn't say quite how far away they are, right. But it is certainly something that as the GM, you want to make sure that you and your players are on the same page and that you don't ambush them with the idea that the scouting character, you were scouting 2 miles out. It was a exploration.
right.
It'll take the other people an hour to get to where you are. You'll be long dead by then. Like, they should know how far out that they're going, and not be like, what? I was 2 miles away. I thought I was like 100 feet at most away.
Right.
Like, as long as the players know how far the scouting characters are roughly scouting and everybody agrees, I think it's going to be okay. And I think the problem is going to be when it goes in either direction in the wrong way, where either the GM thinks that the player was literally just sitting on their butt looking around the room, and the player's like, wait a minute, I thought I was scouting a little bit farther out, or the vice versa, where the player thinks they were just kind of glancing around and the GM thinks they were 2 miles away, or, a half mile away, some distance that's so far that they're in big trouble.
And it is in the Game Mastery Guide, by the way. And
it's in the Game Mastery Guide. It doesn't say how far they are. It just says they might encounter dead ice and fall through before their group can reach them.
Right.
It doesn't say that they will fall through before the group can try to help fish them out of them.
Sure.
But just before the group can be like, no, Derik, don't fall into the thin ice.
But that passage was just, it took some people for a loop, because I think a lot of people imagine scouting as just being like, I'm just being alert. Like I'm still with the group. How could I fall through the ice and no one else fell through the ice? Oh, well, you're scouting. You're obviously away from the group. Anyways, and so,
by the way, this is the number one, what you just described is the number one source of fights for most of my groups, especially for new players that I don't know as well, because what they assume in their heads they're doing is not always what the GM assumes, especially if they don't say it. And it always, how many times have you heard this? You two and everyone in chat, which I can't believe almost no one's left chat, talk about, damn, 2.5 hours and it's still going strong. It's kind of the same numbers. You should know that's how what I meant. Oh, right. Of course I meant to do that.
Right. Well, the classic is like, all right, well, I'm going to charge the ogre and, I'm going to slash. Okay, so you're punching? What do you mean? Well, you never said you were drawing your sword.
Right.
Back.
Right.
Well, but I'm in the dungeon. I'd be walking around with my shield and my sword. Are you?
Right.
Did
right,
you?
Yeah, right.
Like, it's like, that's a, yes.
You get a lot of that, right. I've gotten that. It's like,
to be fair, that is easily solvable, because 99.999% of the time when that is a problem, it's because the game master is being a pedantic dick and they are trying to make things difficult for some unknown reason. Instead, you should be a fan of the PCs and say, of course your character is doing the awesome, smart, correct thing. And if you get halfway through the dungeon and then the fight starts and then the GM goes, well, you're all in total darkness because none of you ever said that you had a torch out.
Well, right? that's being kind of
that is being adversarial, confrontational.
Yeah. No.
You should leave. You should, if you're that game master, you should stop game mastering. If you are a player in a game master who does that, you should stop playing with that game master and go
Yes.
find a better group.
Well, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I think the stereotypical for that is when the player's like, I will walk 20 feet to the north. And maybe you're playing Theater of the Mind, and then the GM's like, all right. So after you fall off the cliff and die, and it's like, wow, wait, I don't walk 20 feet to the north. I thought the cliff was like 50 feet away. And like, no, it was 15 feet away. That's what I said. And you said you want 20 feet to the north. So you fell off the cliff. The GM needs to not only be a fan of the players, like that's not always enough. They need to be sort of the Oculus that is showing the world to the players, because their characters live in that world. They can see everything. You might be able to see it in your mind's eye as the GM, but your players can't unless you tell them.
Right, and that's where you get into the weird meta where you're like, no, Mark, I do want to go off the cliff. And then you're like, wait, your character resists you? Like, I don't want to die. And you're like, no, you will jump off the cliff to your death, character. And the character's
I would at least say, are you sure you want to walk 20 feet to the north? Because remember, there's the cliff, so you like 15 feet, and you'll walk off, and they'd be like, "Oh, I thought it was 50. Never mind, I don't want to do that."
I've had many times, and this is on the freaking podcast. You can hear it. It's like they captured. This is StarCraft. They captured someone. They were StarCraft. We were talking about StarCraft before. Starfinder. And when they captured someone, and they were interviewing him and trying to get information, and then Chris Beamer's like, I pull out my gun and kill him. And I'm like, and the guy's like, what? And I'm like, you do it. He's dead. And I was like, and then it became this whole thing. But here's the thing. Chris Beamer, I've known this guy 35 years. If he said he did it, I know, because I played with him so long, he meant it. I didn't even have to say, are you sure? I know what he meant. And no one argued. There was no argument over whether or not he killed that guy. It was no, oh, I didn't mean to do it. It's like, no, he said he did it. I know he did it. And the rest of the party was yelling at him. They weren't yelling at me. They were yelling at him. Because why'd you do that?
I could see that maybe like you make some sort of like an opposed reflex save if a character wants to try to...
Well, they had the gun to his head, so it was like just pulling the trigger. No, there was no save.
No, in Powered by the Apocalypse, we call that a golden opportunity. By the way, I see somebody in chat, a couple of people in chat, but one person in chat has been basically saying like, skill checks are bad and players need to, be good at the game. Poor kid. He says, is the character playing the game or is the player playing the game?
That's a good one.
And I will say this, the third rule of Dungeon Craft says that a good adventure, good session, I suppose you could say it, should challenge the players and it should challenge the player characters. The truth of the matter is, in a D20 game like Pathfinder or D&D, you should be doing both. You should be challenging the players and you should be getting them to do things and make decisions and putting some of the onus on them. But this is a game about characters and stats and feats and skills, and that is part of the game too. And you should be challenging that. Even going back to our precious AD&D, to our precious BX, to our precious 1977 version of Dungeons and Dragons. Characters still had saving throws. Characters still had ability checks. Characters still had attack rolls. And they may have been THAC0. But the fact of the matter was there were still parts of the game that tested the player character, and then there were also parts of the game that tested the player. And I think that is perfectly fine. I think that is okay. And I think when you ignore one to the detriment of the other, I think at least in the D20 space, I think you are missing some of the fun of the game. And then I think
that the main question on how you challenge your players and their characters is part of the group's social contract.
Yes.
And it will vary from group to group. It will vary greatly from group to group. For example, Linda at one point created a puzzle that was so mathematically complicated that even she didn't understand the solution that one of the mathematicians in our group used to get to the right answer. That was like, because he had somehow mapped it onto like this weird graph theory problem. And she was like, I don't immediately understand why or how you did exactly what you just did here, but that is the correct answer to the problem. It's because she knew that everybody who was coming to that session that week really liked in-depth puzzles out of character. And that would have been an atrocious decision to make for some other groups that do not like that kind of thing. So I think that The problem is that your RPG probably shouldn't be forcing you to put things onto the players that might not be in that player's wheelhouse. For example,
100%.
if your players literally are in the army, they probably know, like Steven said, all the best ways to search a room, and they may want to describe how they surround the complex and how they check each individual room based on you giving them the floor plan. They say, in that case, I'll check this corner first, sweep my gaze over to there. That's great. It's playing great. It's great for your group. That's fantastic. But if your players are not that, but their characters are, because they're adventurers, then you probably shouldn't be challenging your players to have to know the army way of sweeping the room correctly, and instead let them use a skill check. And that, even within the same game, varies from person to person and group to group. I think the problem is when a game assumes that you definitely have to force the players to do it, or that you definitely can't let the players do any of it. And a game does better when it's in the middle ground and allows the GM to decide what's right for their group.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also too, Ollie said something that I completely agree with, which is, because the classic example is, should you give your players a puzzle, like a real puzzle?
Yeah,
right.
That's why I gave that example.
And another classic example is, well, no, tell me how you convince the innkeeper to let you stay here for the night. And it's like, well, I'm not a charismatic person. I don't know, but my character is, right. And it's like, you shouldn't put me in that situation. And I do agree with that to a certain extent, but I agree with Ollie, which is as a game master, what's far more interesting to me, the player choices aren't, hey, can my player or the PC solve this puzzle? I don't really care about that. What I care about is, are you going to try to save the town, or are you going to try to stop the villain before they get away? Like, making those tough choices, that to me is far more compelling than me, throwing a puzzle on the ground and saying,
Spider-Man choice.
You solve it.
Oh, Steven, you played with me. You played with me the one time.
I did.
My game mastering thing is all about making people make horrible, like, Pyrrhic decisions all the time.
Yeah, but
right?
I roll natural 20s constantly, and
right. And then you know what happens? It feels like a real win, because I, as a game master, constantly give my players, basically, they're both bad options. Like, you're not excited about either of them, and I basically say, choose. You must choose.
Yeah, but you play with me, and I'm chaotic, so I didn't care.
But that is the best part about D&D, is that
right.
Sometimes a character will roll the crit, or they will roll the
that happened to us in our Avatar game. Remember?
That happened to us. Yes, that happened to us in our Avatar game. And you know what? Then I say, you deserve it. You get both. And it feels like a real win, because it is. I wasn't going to give that to you. Like the classic example I always use of this is like the third Batman movie with Val Kilmer and the second Batman movie with Christian Bale. In that movie, the Riddler has his Bruce Wayne's love interest, and then he has Robin, the one with Jim Carrey, dangled up in, he's going to let them fall to their death. And he basically is like, I need to know the answer. Who are you really? Are you Batman, or are you Bruce Wayne?
Right.
And the way I'm going to figure that out is by dropping both of these people and see who you save. It's so compelling, but because it's a kid's comic book movie, he saves both of them, right? Because he dives down and shoots a batarang.
Christopher Nolan.
But not in the Christopher Nolan one.
And the thing is that bothers him the most, that at the end of the movie that he doesn't know how to deal with, is that he tried to save his love interest.
He saved the wrong person.
Right. And it was set up that whoever he saved had killed the other one.
Right. And it's such a great, like, Joker move, where he made it so you had to pick. So there was no getting both.
Right.
And then he picked, and then he gave you the other one.
Right.
So it's like a double dead. But my point is like, my point is, my games tend to be more like The Dark Knight rather than Batman Forever. Right, where you get to you get to save both, and everybody's happy, and you get the girl, and you say,
yours.
Gotham is yours. But because we're playing D&D, and because it's a game, or we're playing Powered by the Apocalypse, when someone rolls that extraordinary result, miracles can happen, and that's what makes that so exciting, and that's what makes it so fun. So
we'll finish up. This is the problem when it's a day before a holiday. No one works tomorrow. Yay! I mean, I'm gonna still work, but Derek's off.
I'm off.
And Mark's off.
Not only am I off, But last week we had a tip goal, which was normally on Thursdays I stream.
Oh,
and I had a tip goal, which was, do I get the holiday off?
No,
and
because we're gonna do. I know you get.
They reached the tip goal, and so they actually my viewers supported me, and I was like,
wow,
okay, I'm taking the day off.
So the very last thing, actually, I don't even remember what was the last thing. So I'll do the very last thing. What are you doing for the Thanksgiving holiday, Mark? You're with your family, so I presume you're just going to spend Thanksgiving with the family.
Yeah, I think that they're going to a family friends or something like that. So
do you actually have
probably
like
what's gonna?
I mean, you're vegetarian, so you're not gonna have like turkey and stuff. So what do you have on Thanksgiving usually?
I mean, usually I just make something that I like because I'm not a huge fan of the Thanksgiving tableau, being a very turkey-based
a turkey-based
situation.
system. I'm not so much into the TBS. I'm more into the BGS.
So I'll just probably make something that's like what I would normally be in the mood for, and I will probably, since we're going to another place, eat it in advance. And that way I will not have to worry about like interrupting people or like bringing my stuff to the table or reheating or anything like that. And I can hang out with people.
What are you doing, Derik?
Well, Thanksgiving used to be a big holiday for my family. But as people have gotten older and moved away and stuff like that, it's kind of shrunk down. And now usually my sister hosts it, but less and less people are showing. And tomorrow, apparently, it's just going to be my sister, her family, her husband, her kids. My mom might stop by, and I think that's it. So it's really going to be a very small thing. And my sister, of course, I told her, don't make everything. She's going to make everything. So there's going to be all the stuff. And back in the day, I used to be the guy for my family who did the turkey. I used to do the roasting. But now I don't. If anything, I chip in to buy a honey baked ham. But,
honey baked ham.
Honey baked ham is so good. Anyways, point is, there's gonna be way too much food. I'm gonna go over there, eat a bunch, take a bunch of leftovers. My sister's gonna insist, and then I'll pretty much probably eat turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy and stuffing and ham and pie, because pumpkin pie with whipped cream is like one of my favorite things in existence.
Really, I hate pumpkin pie, but
I love pumpkin pie. Love it.
So yeah, I have a small family because both my parents are only children. So we never had we like Thanksgiving, but we never had big Thanksgiving ever. And right now my parents and my wife's parents are in Florida, so we go to her sister's. So it'll be me and my two kids, her sister and her two kids, and some family friends. So it's going to be, I think, 12 people. And that's about right. It's about it. It's like 12 people. But we did the same thing, is that we never had honey baked ham. But a couple years ago, my brother-in-law's father insisted on having a honey baked ham at Thanksgiving, and he was in town. So we got the honey baked ham for the first time ever. And I never had honey baked ham ever. Okay. We had it, and we were all like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever!" So we always have honey baked ham at Thanksgiving now. So turkey, honey baked ham. My kids are actually making. My son made the dessert, and I can smell it. He's making chocolate pie. He makes really good chocolate desserts. So he's making a chocolate pie of some sort. My daughter made. It's like a corn casserole. It's basically corn and butter. That's basically it. And you bake it. There might be like sugar in it too, but it's fantastic. It's so good. It's like imagine a brownie, but instead of brownie, it's made of corn. That's what it is.
That's pretty cool.
And that's it.
But yeah, I'm a fan of Thanksgiving. I like the Thanksgiving meats. I'm more of a savory guy. I do like pumpkin pie, but like I've never been much more of like a candy and sweets kind of guy. We're not. They actually. I enjoy umami flavors.
Oh, you're one of those. Now I know. That explains a lot about you.
Yes. I like rich. I like fatty foods. I don't mind the taste of, like I like a fattier cut of meat.
No, really? Like no, I hate that. Yeah.
But I am not vegetarian, but I have in general, though, significantly cut down on how much meat I eat.
I am, as you guys all know, I've become less of a carnivore than I used to be, but I'm still heavy carnivore. Although I do have potatoes, so I do like mashed potatoes.
Oh.
Starch and meats. That is my go-to. So,
but not vegan, because I do eat a lot of dairy. I eat a lot of dairy.
Yeah, no, I can never do that.
Oh. And eggs.
Oh, I have eggs every morning.
Yeah,
that's my breakfast. So,
anyways, point is, it's a fun little holiday, and I'm looking forward to it being very low key. And so sounds cool.
Yeah, and I was hoping, and every couple of years I go to the parade, but this year I'm not going. So
I don't. And the other thing is, I don't watch the footballs, so I don't care about sports. I don't watch the parade. So all that stuff.
The parade's great.
You miss me with all that. I don't care about any of that.
I love the parade. Dude, that's what you get to see, because the first part is Broadway shows, most of which I've seen. Oh, I saw, talk about Broadway shows. I saw Merrily We Go Along, and on Friday, every Friday on Thanksgiving, we see a Broadway show, because there's nothing else to do. Last year, we saw Chicago with my kids, because they never saw it. But this year, you know what we're seing? Spam-A-Lot.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I saw it when it first came out, like 22 years ago, with Tim Curry as King Arthur.
R.I.P.
Right. He's still alive.
Is he?
Yeah,
No,
he is. He had a huge stroke, and he's in bad shape, but he's still alive.
You are right. He is still around.
I know he's still around. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. When he goes, I'll be very upset. Unfortunately, if you take a look at him now, he's in rough shape, because he got a massive stroke.
That'll happen when you get older and when you have a stroke.
I know, it's sad. But anyhow, my kids, here, what do you think of this, Mark?
Let me see.
My kids have no idea. They're like, what's Spam-A-Lot? I go, well, it's based off of Knights of Round Table, King Arthur, and Camelot. They're like, what's that?
You've never even heard of King Arthur and Camelot?
No, none of them. No one. None of my...
What?
They're friends, too. None. They've never heard of it. None of them.
You know,
There's
it's funny.
No way.
Yeah, none of them. They've never heard of it. And
they never heard...
No, they never did. None of them. It's not... Where were they here from? Think about it.
Actually... On the channel the other day, we actually just did a first look.
I saw that
at Pendragon 6th edition. Yeah.
It looked cool, actually. I was watching the stream. I was trying to explain it to them, and they didn't want to hear it. They're like, whatever.
That's crazy. That's just crazy.
It wasn't even that I didn't explain. Like, they didn't know what Monty Python is. Fine.
Not knowing what Monty Python is, of course, like, there are a lot of people who don't know what that is, but not even having heard King Arthur as college and high school students.
No. Never.
That's not wild.
While we're being old men.
I don't think that's about old or not old. Like, just like, this is something that was in the 12th century. It's so old that by this point, like, the fact of whether you know it or not,
you think it's going to stick around forever.
Well, no, D&D is something that it really matters when you grew up and how old you are, because you could have been alive since it began, whereas no one is currently alive that in any way made them close to being alive in the 12th century when a lot of these Arthurian literature were written.
They not here. None of their friends heard of it either. And this is both college and high school students.
Like, there are college classes that are about specifically Arthurian literature. Oh, I know because I took a class, Arthurian literature and Celtic colonization.
Yeah, but it's just not... I mean, I know what she was getting taught. First of all, a lot of things they were getting taught in school didn't even exist when I was around. Like, they were learning, like, one of the big things she taught, which was actually very interesting, is like she did a big cultural history on Angels in America and sort of the AIDS crisis in the 80s. And I was there when that happened. I remember seeing that play, that is like, what else is being taught? Other things. That's the thing. It's like other stuff is getting taught. And
I mean, cultural touchstones, I guess, change, over time. Yeah. But that's crazy.
Well,
but
they're going to see it and have no reference. So I'm very curious.
I saw this. I don't know if it was a tweet or something, but it was from some game manufacturer. And he was like, yeah, we had a booth that, like a PAX type thing. This is like real recent. He's like, and we had two setups. We had the one TV with the controller, like the PlayStation controller. And then we had the other one with keyboard and mouse. And all day, we had a line, but nobody was on the keyboard and mouse. And he's like, and we realized kids had never used a keyboard and mouse. And he goes, so the next day we replaced the keyboard and mouse with a controller. And he goes, and you know what we discovered? The kids didn't know how to use the controller either. They kept going up to the screen because like these kids had never played a game with a controller. They had played everything on their whole life on their phone, on their tablet. They didn't even know really how to use a controller. They weren't familiar with it enough to know that it was like the thing they should be using to play this game with. And I was like, wow, that's rough.
Yeah, so Joe Russell, I did see Spamalot when it first came out, and I think that was well over 20 years, like 22, 23 years ago. And I am excited to see it again. I love it. So it's funny. I even tried to show her the song from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It was like, right to the round table. And I tried to show it. No interest. I was like,
oh, man.
I know. They don't care. I was like, all right, well, there you go. I guess we'll see. I'm like, well, I guess you're going to see it and have no reference. But I'm actually now, as a psychological experiment, curious to see if they like it or don't because they have no reference of what it's based off of. So does that work or not work? Yeah. Who knows? I guess we're going to find out.
Well, never mind Camelot. 'Tis a silly place.
It's a silly place. All right. Well, we should wrap it up because 3 hours, and now finally people are dropping off because they're like, okay, 3 hours is the limit.
Take care, everyone. Have a great Thanksgiving if you're in America, and if you're not, you can have a good week too.
Oh man, Absolutely. That's so mean. And don't forget, only 4 more days left for.
I really hope we can unlock some more of the things that are in there.
Yeah, and hopefully, if you like wandering, ambling conversations about the philosophy of game mastery, check us out. Knights of Last Call.
That's all he does.
All I do.
That's all he does is wander.
I like those, so
if you want to have no coherent subjects whatsoever,
that's right.
Check us out.
No, we covered sorcerer yesterday. We covered the history of the sorcerer class, and we stayed on topic. We did get a little bit into like Vancian versus non-Vancian and like why that is a thing, but for the most part, we talked about the sorcerer.
All right.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.